Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Soul Chess in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 131, Zaraki Kenpeka the Indestructible. Third-person POV. Southern Rakanga. Kenpeka and Vanguard clash attacks with each other. Kenpeka struggles to put a dent on the powerful Vastolords as their cold steel clashed blow for blow. Ichigo attempted to get in a few strikes, but he was just as easily overpowered and stopped. Vanguard burst forth a sphere of energy around him, forcing Ichigo and Kenpeka to draw away from him. "Ha, these blows are as weak as mosquito bites," Vanguard taunted. "Then allow me to get serious," Kenpeka replied, shouting like a madman as he goes for a double-handed sword strike, his favorite kendo attack. Kenpeka swung down his blade with tremendous force, but in the aftermath of the slash, Vanguard stands there as if nothing even happened. "How disappointing, I thought you said you were going to get serious. What is with this guy? He took Kenpeka's strike and doesn't even have a scratch. These Togabito are insanely powerful," Ichigo said to himself. In the next moment he was dragged out of his thoughts as Vanguard decked Kenpeka in the face and sent him flying, destroying a few cheekbones. Kenpeka got up though. He'd had worse. Ichigo appeared at his side to offer aid. "Ichigo. Move," Kenpeka said, surly. "Not until you get on your feet, you okay?" "I don't think I made myself clear," Kenpeka said, and grabbed Ichigo by the shoulder and tossed him behind him onto the ground. "What the hell gives?" Ichigo shouted as he jumped to his feet. "Lelouch said we were to fight together. Why do you want to fight him by yourself so badly? That hollow killed the only person I've ever admired in my entire lifetime," Kenpeka answered as he looked at Ichigo with a look of sorrow. "She gave me a name, the only time I ever had a name. When she died, my name died with it." "What did she call you?" "Hitiki," Kenpeka responded. "She named me that because we were rivals and friends until that day. The day when that bastard," he gestured towards Vanguard with his Zanpakuto, "killed her." "Ah yes, now I remember," Vanguard started to remember the incident. "You didn't have an eye patch back then. I remember the woman. She defended you with her life. Such a foolish sentiment. Bastard." Kenpeka attacked again, only to get uppercut in the jaw and punched in the stomach, and was sent flying back at Ichigo. "You're not the only one that has gotten stronger in all these years," Vanguard told Kenpeka. "As I told you before, your kind fails at evolution, while my kind stands supreme, yes. Kenpeka, you gotta let me help. You'll die without me." Kenpeka stood next to Ichigo, his haori flapping outward. "Not a chance. This is personal business. I'm going to mount that guy's head over the fireplace in the barracks." "Go Kenny," Yachiru cheerfully stated. "Yachiru, stay by Ichigo's side and don't come any closer, understood?" Kenpeka said to the childlike vice captain. "Okie dokie," Yachiru replied as she looked at Kenpeka's eyes. Her cheery demeanor dropped somewhat. "I've never seen Kenny so angry before. This is nothing like the Kenny I know. I'm still going to interfere if it looks like you're about to die. Go avenge your friend." "How touching. It's been almost a century and a half and you're still thinking of that claymore-wielding Soul Reaper. You even gave the little girl over there her name. She even has the same cotton candy-colored hair and is a lieutenant with Captain Class Rias too. You flew into such a humorous rage when I killed your mentor. I wonder how much you'll cry if I kill the girl you named after her." If Vanguard had a mouth he would have smiled, but instead the skin under his eyes simply curved upward, indicating he was making the best effort. He struck forward and Ichigo blocked it as Kenpeka was too unperceptive to see it coming. He was having trouble pushing it off. "Damn it, this guy's strong. His fist feels like a truck full of lead elephants." "Not bad, but not good enough." Vanguard held up his free hand as energy charged into it. "Damn it, Asiro. Go all out, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso." Kenpeka bumped Ichigo aside and then cut Vanguard up the chest. Vanguard was forced back and his Zero was cancelled. The peaceful meadows were now being engulfed in a violent amount of Riasta that causes the ground to violently shake as if the entire area was next to a fault line during a 9.0 earthquake. The sky lit up from miles away from Kenpeka's golden yellow Riastu as energy surges the battlefield. "Amazing," Kenpeiga never ceases to amaze me with his Ryostu. Ichigo said to himself. Kenny can't lose now. That's the same amount of power that took out the Zero Espada with ease. Yachiro thought to herself as she recalled Kenpeiga's story about his epic battle with the massive Aaron car which towered over the Britannia's Empirical Nation building in New Yorkshire and had enormous amounts of power. The sole Seiko Koet in existence stood his ground as his wound healed. Kenpeiga tore towards him again as their blades clashed. Vanguard's blade slid against Kenpeiga's as sparks flew, only for Kenpeiga to slice into the Hollow's wrist and nearly hacked off his arm. Vanguard responded by kicking Kenpeiga in the chest and healed his new injury. Kenpeiga grinned as he came off the blow. See the difference now, Vanguard? I'm not the same weak Rungokai citizen you fought over a century years ago. I'm now among the strongest captains in the Soul Society. I long hoped to fight you one day and make you pay for what you did to me that day, Kenpeiga said to Vanguard as he charged at the pinnacle of Hollow Evolution. Don't get so confident, Vanguard replied as he dodged Kenpeiga's blow while regenerating the damaged skin tissue and muscle tendons on his right wrist from the brutal slash from Kenpeiga. Now Vanguard. Prepare to go back to hell. Kenpeiga shouted with a maddening battle cry as he attacks the Seiko Koet. Ichigo and Yachiro watched the battle go on as each blow from Kenpeiga and Vanguard kicked up dust and dirt into the sky, turning the entire peaceful meadows into a scene from a war movie, complete with explosions. Boy, Kenpeiga is really going all out on this guy, Ichigo said to Yachiro, eyes wide with shock. He sure is, Yachiro replied with her usual cheerful banter. Kenpeiga went for a decapitating slash, but Vanguard dodged the attack and retaliated with a right hook. Kenpeiga blocked the Seiko Koet's fist with his blade. No damage resulted. Vanguard leaned back as Kenpeiga stabbed forward. He struck his sword into the ground, giving it a firm pedestal in the earth, and then unleashed a relenting fury of 50 punches, forcing Kenpeiga back on the defensive. What's the matter? Is blocking all you can do against my superior speed and strength? Nothing's the matter. I'm just getting warmed up, Kenpeiga declared. The battle raged on with Kenpeiga still fighting an unarmed Vanguard, but the battle was well even despite it, or so it seemed. Something isn't right here, Zanjista said to Ichigo. What are you talking about? Ichigo asked the older half of his Zanpakuto spirit. The fight looked pretty even to him. Even though Vanguard had discarded his weapon, Ichigo believed that it had only served to increase the Hollow's combat prowess. Look closely at the battle, Ichigo. Ichigo watched Kenpeiga wildly swinging with as much force as possible while in his level 1 state, cutting into powerful Seiko Koet several times only for the damage to regenerate. However, Vanguard didn't seem to be trying at all. I've got to warn him. Kenpeiga, he's toying with you. Watch out. But before Kenpeiga could heed that warning, he swung his sword at Vanguard's head with both hands. Vanguard blocked with his wrist with a smug smirk and no injuries. Kenpeiga is injured from the force of the blow, similarly to when Ichigo faced him the first time and was allowed a free shot. Kenpeiga was surprised. You trolling bastard, Kenpeiga snickered as if he was enjoying the fact that he had been tricked. Yes, the exact same tactic I used on you the last time. Face it, Zaraki Kenpeiga, I will always be stronger than you. Vanguard decked Kenpeiga across the face and then drove his elbow into Kenpeiga's chest, igniting the strike with a green-black flame and sending Kenpeiga flying back onto his back. His Haori and chest were singed, but he got up. TCH, damn. I knew this guy was strong, but I didn't think our power difference was this big. Oh well, guess that'll make this more interesting. As Kenpeiga got up and prepared for another round, Vanguard was right in his space and pulled back his fist and drove it into the captain's abdomen, cracking a few of Kenpeiga's ribs. Kenpeiga leaned forward and coughed up blood. I've grown quite tired of this charade. You've grown much stronger than the last time. However, the gap in power between us is still like heaven and earth. And this is not even anywhere close to being my full power, Vanguard taunted as he sauntered towards Kenpeiga and then uppercut him in the jaw, causing Kenpeiga's neck to snap back against his back as Kenpeiga was knocked into the air, only for Vanguard to jump and deliver an overhead right hook to send Kenpeiga sailing towards the ground. He landed hard on the grass, causing it to tremble under his might and weight. Kenpeiga! Ichigo shouted as he rushes to aid Kenpeiga, but stops as Kenpeiga gets up again. You're a stubborn one, Vanguard said to Kenpeki as he prepares to strike and uses a knife-edge chop to stab his hand into Kenpeka's chest, piercing deep into the captain's left pectoral, causing him to cough up blood, again. Ichigo and Yachiro just stared when Kenpeki was let go, and Vanguard stood his ground with Kenpeka's blood all over his hand. However, the reaction from Kenpeki wasn't what was expected. It started with little snickers, almost mistaken for crying, but it became louder and louder until Kenpeki was laughing like a madman. Ha 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 ha. The captain cackled. What are you laughing about, and how are you able to stand after I hit a main artery? Vanguard asked, scowling. Sorry, Kenpeki said, resting his blade on his shoulder, but I couldn't help but laugh at the fact that I'd fall for the same trick twice in a row. You're the fool around here if you think this is all I've got. A blue flame surged around Kenpeki's sword only to be overtaken by a green one. Level 2. Kenpeki shouted as his Ryutsu intensifies and swung down with his sword in his right hand. Ichigo used his Ryusta to shield Yachiro from the intense wave of Ryutsu caused by the release of Kenpeki's ability. Yay! Kenny is finally getting boosted up. Yachiro said to the orange-haired Shinigami. What the hell is going on? Ichigo asked Yachiro. Yachiro was quick to explain how Kenpeki's Zanpakuto worked. Kenny can't willfully go into higher levels. His opponent has to beat him up, or he has to beat up his opponent to get to the next level. Levels? You make it sound like a game. Fighting is a game. Ichigo had no comment to Yachiro's statement just then. Back on the battlefield, Kenpeki was holding on to the severed hand of Vanguard, the one that had just impaled him earlier, and throws it on the ground with blood squirting out of Vanguard's right arm socket. Wordlessly, Vanguard regenerated his right arm. With anger, the Seiko Koet retaliated by whamming Kenpeki in the stomach again, but Kenpeki brushes it off as he backflips through the air, lands, and charges towards Vanguard again. Yeah. This is what I'm talking about. Hit me some more so I can gain the strength to rip you to shreds. Kenpeki shouted as he charges at the hollow, taking a giant leap into the sky. Vanguard followed suit to meet Kenpeki in midair. As the combatants dropped to the ground, Vanguard's wound regenerated and Kenpeki brushed off the punch he had been hit with. While Kenpeki's strength had increased, there was still a notable gap in power. He would be able to give Vanguard a harder time now, but he was still weaker. The battle eventually left the ground and both combatants took to the sky and walked on air to punish each other. Vanguard used a leaping kick to hit Kenpeki, but the captain blocked with his sword. The Squad 11 captain swung horizontally as Vanguard retreated from his kick. Vanguard lunged forward to punch Kenpeki, but the bloodthirsty sword-wielding demon grabbed the black creature's right arm and chucked him towards the ground. Kenpeki went slamming towards the ground, but Vanguard dodged the attack and the shockwave resulting from Kenpeki's massive Ryutsu. The Seiko Koet got in close and swerved around Kenpeki as he slashed downward, grabbed the captain by the neck and flung him as he spun 180 degrees. He waited until Kenpeki gained his footing and then got in close to deliver an uppercut to Kenpeki's jaw, but Kenpeki parried by stepping back and away from the attack and, while Vanguard was airborne, tackled him, stuck his sword into the spirit's chest and slashed up and out the creature's shoulder. As Vanguard reeled from his wound, Kenpeki went in screaming with furious glee to strike again, but Vanguard blocked the blade with his good hand to stop the assault, trying to push Kenpeki off. Damn, you just won't go down. I could say the same about you with all the punishment you've been taking. My wounds regenerate, but I've seen less holes in Swiss cheese. You're a serious glutton to punishment. Kenpeki just grinned. Yup, and I've never felt better. What is wrong with you? Everything. Kenpeki replied, shouting as if he was possessed by a demon. The damage he had suffered at the hands of Vanguard didn't deter him at all, they only made him more excited and berserk. I don't get it. No matter how much blood my fist draws from him, he keeps coming back for more. He's in a different league from all the victims I killed so far. He doesn't fear pain or death, Vanguard stressed. Kenpeki charged at Vanguard harder, putting the Seiko Koet on the defensive as he swung his sword with reckless abandon, laughing like a hyena on noxious oxide, but having the killing intent of a shark honing in on its prey. Vanguard stares at the face of the demon of the bloodthirsty sword, emitting a golden aura filled with the intent to kill or be killed. Of course, it didn't take Kenpeki long to realize his attacks were slowly becoming ineffective. He let out a deep breath and performed a two-handed slash, coming in hard and fast, tearing off Vanguard's right arm from the shoulder joint. Vanguard punched Kenpeki away, but he missed in his frustration as Kenpeki leapt back. "Damn, I meant to hit your head with that slash. Gotta work on my aim." Vanguard, however, remained as stoic as ever. "I must admit, I never expected your attack to be strong enough to cleaning slice my arm off, Zaraki Kenpeki. Consider this a compliment of your raw power from the pinnacle of Hollow Evolution. To cut my arm at just a small fraction of my power is considered a great feat. Why are you so calm? You just lost an arm. You can heal up as much as you like, but now I have the edge and I haven't even reached level 3 yet. Fool, you think this is over because you cut me? I underestimated you, but here's a news flash for you, I've been holding back my real power all this time. You're bluffing. Very well then, allow me to show you." Vanguard's eyes flashed, "my true power," replied as his eyes shined an even fiercer green. With a fearsome roar, Vanguard's Ryotsu increased significantly. Several veins on his body now glowed green as they flowed up towards his brain, as if traveling along with Vanguard's central nervous system. Nice. This fight just gets more and more interesting by the second. Kenpeki dashed at Vanguard like a maniac with two hands on his Zanpakuto, but in the next moment Vanguard had his blade in hand and blocked the attack with ease. "Haha, I was wondering when I'd get you to use your sword. Like I said, I'm done playing around with you," Vanguard said calmly as he cuts right through Kenpeki's Shikai, snapping the blade in half and almost cutting Kenpeki in half with the deep slash. "What?" Kenpeki thinks as he drops towards the ground, feeling drained. "Did you seriously think I was fighting at full power? I haven't fought an opponent with power to match my own in quite a while, so I've forgotten what it's like to actually have an enjoyable battle. However, I must say it seems I just don't know my own strength sometimes," Vanguard said as he planted his blade in the ground. "Yes. Kenpeki!" Ichigo shouted in horror as he sees Kenpeki struggling to move. "It can't be, Kenny. Yachiro shouted as she tries to rush to aid Kenpeki but is paralyzed by the Ryotsu Vanguard is emitting as he arrives by her and Ichigo. "Don't kill him, you big meanie!" Yachiro shouted. "A little late for that when he's already dead. No one can survive an injury like the one I just did to him." Vanguard began to gloat. What a pitiful inferior life form. Trying to fight the pinnacle of Hollow Evolution was a suicide mission to begin with. You two are just as much fools as he is to mess with me and break into Aizen-sama's new world. But if the despair is too much to bear, how about I help you join him?" Vanguard stared at Yachiro. "Little girl." Yachiro just pointed behind Vanguard with an emotionless expression. Vanguard turned around only to get punched in the eye by Kenpeki's fist. "Oh, sorry, was that your eye?" "That was your eye, wasn't it?" Kenpeki chuckled. As Vanguard's eye swelled and surged with pain, he was suddenly slashed in the back by Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho and turned his attention to the teen. "I know you said you didn't want help, but I'm tagging in," Ichigo told Kenpeki. "It's no fun just watching." Kenpeki grinned. "Tch, fine, but I get to be the one that finishes him off. Just give me a few minutes to catch my breath and you tag out when I tell you to. You honestly think you can stand up to me, boy? I trust you know who you face. Yeah, a big, black, bastard that murdered the friend of my friend." Vanguard laughed. "Since you seem so ignorant, allow me to explain to you that you face the pinnacle of—" "Yeah, I don't care," Ichigo said and rushed in at Vanguard faster than the Vastolords could blink, palmed his face, swooped up into the air and slammed him down a couple 100 meters away into the ground. Getsuga Tensho. Firing off an insanely powerful blast from his sword, Ichigo followed up his strike against Vanguard and then retreated to the ground to meet up with his opponent on a level altitude. Vanguard appeared on the ground with a chunk missing from the right hemisphere of his head and a deep gash on the right side of his body. "Not bad, Soul Reaper," Vanguard said as his wounds regenerated, "but you need to do better than that." Vanguard lunged forward with a powerful arching sweep at Ichigo, both hands on the blade, but Ichigo leapt up and stood on his tiptoes on the flat portion of the blade as he held his other leg up in the air, spreading his arms out. Vanguard growled, moved his sword with one hand and tried to grab Ichigo with the other, but the teen escaped from the range of the Hollow's grasp and fired a weak Getsuga into his arm. The attack was a scratch, but at least it was damage. "How's that?" That isn't nearly enough to kill the pinnacle of Hollow Evolution, Vanguard scoffed. Do you really think you're a match against the future king of Hyukdomundo? Vanguard asked him. Future king of Hyukdomundo? Ichigo asked, shocked to hear the news. Aizen-sama promised once we crush all remaining opposition that I would become the king of Hyukdomundo as I once was, Vanguard explained to Ichigo. Sorry pal, ain't happening. You're going back to hell where you belong. Ichigo attacked again. Arrogant fool. Vanguard struck at Ichigo again, but missed. Ichigo then blew past him and 7 shallow slashes formed along Vanguard's body. Vanguard turned around and tried to crush Ichigo with his incredible reach using an overhead double-handed swing, pushing Ichigo towards the ground as the teen blocked with both hands on his sword. You can barely push off the force of my blow. This is why your kind fails at evolution. Maybe we do fail evolution, but at least I don't go around hurting innocent people. Fah. Innocence has no meaning. I kill worthless life forms, those who fail at evolution. Weak, pathetic creatures must die in order for the strong to thrive. That is the world, Aizen-sama, Hashima-sama and I strive for. Vanguard explained to Ichigo. You bastard! Ichigo shouted. Call me what you will, but the fact of the matter remains that we are simply purifying the world from lesser life forms like you. Vanguard took another swing at Ichigo only for the teen to this time deflect the blow, surprising Vanguard. If you are trying to kill weak and defenseless people, then you are the enemy. I'm not Superman, so I can't say anything big like I'll protect everyone on Earth. I'm not a modest guy who will say it's enough if I can protect as many people as my 2 hands can handle either. I want to protect a mountain load of people, and scum like you who murders people out of your self-righteous bullshit will not prevail as long as I draw my breath. A lowly speech from an even lower life form. You Soul Reapers have always been inferior to the Hollows. You can't even comprehend the perfection that stands before you. You know it's arrogant fucks like you that piss me off the most. Then come at me. Show me your hatred. Yes, Vanguard responded as he quickly prepares his blade to strike. He attempted to cut Ichigo's sword arm clean off, but Ichigo vanished with his superior speed and then began running circles around Vanguard to confuse him, firing off weak Getsuga blasts at random intervals. I don't want to waste my hollow vacation just yet. I need to bait him out. He's going easy on me right now, but when he drops his guard, that will be my opportunity to take him down in one shot, Ichigo thought to himself as he continues to toy with Vanguard. He then stops, charges a Getsuga and fires it. Vanguard appeared behind the teen as he heals the damage from the intense strike, and Ichigo turns to block him. However, the force of the blow is more intense than before. Vanguard's blade manages to cut partially into Ichigo's Bankai with ease, forcing Ichigo to draw away at the sensation. Damn, what was that? He looked at his sword. I felt like Tensou Zanjutsu could have almost split in half. Are you surprised, Kurosaki Ichigo? All this time I've been pulling your strings just as I was with your friend. Now I'm fighting for real and you have no chance now that I'm using all my strength and power. Vanguard explained to Ichigo. Don't underestimate me, Vanguard. I have only begun to fight. Vanguard merely scowled in response, and the fight resumes. Both combatants unleash powerful slashes which uplift the ground around them like erupting volcanoes. Vanguard dodged a lunging stab from Ichigo and blocked a hooking slash aimed at his head. He then managed to parry Ichigo's next strike, a diagonal dual-handed slash, and knocked Ichigo back. He struck forward with his blade to slash the teenager from shoulder to hip, but Ichigo managed to dodge back with his speed and got off with just a scratch to the center of his torso. Damn, this guy is stronger than I originally thought. No wonder Kenpeki was having trouble with him. I'm so stupid. Just because I fought with the 20th most powerful Togabito and felt Kazumi's Ryutsu, I think I know the true strength of the top 10. Ichigo said to himself as he dodges a slash from Vanguard. Vanguard started charging up a normal zero in his right arm. Ichigo began to dodge, but after it was fired he noticed that the blast wasn't meant for him. The zero was aimed towards Kenpeki and Yachiroa, and the former was not yet ready to charge back into battle. Ichigo used Shunpo to intercept the blast and allowed the blast to hit him on his back, shielding his allies Yachiroa from the attack and taking quite a bit of damage himself, dropping to his knees and standing back up, panting like a dog as he looks back towards Vanguard. Ichi. Yachiru exclaimed. Well, that was stupid. I could have just dodged, you know, Kenpeki told Ichigo. Don't me like you're trying to catch flies, step aside. Kenpeki said, only to pick Ichigo up by his hair and toss him over Yachiru's head. Ow. Hey. What gives? Ichigo shouted. Shut up. You're the one that just got yourself mangled up. Do that fancy schmancy thing with your coat to regenerate your Ryutsu. I'm going back into battle. By this time Vanguard appeared in front of the trio. Yachiru was protected by Kenpeki's Ryutsu, so she wasn't affected by Vanguard's. You Soul Reapers are so easy to manipulate, yes. Another reason why you fail at evolution. Are you going to preach about this evolution crap all day? I couldn't care less. I don't expect a lesser mind like you to do so. Well, that's something you and I can agree on. Oh, and by the way, a manic grin swept over Kenpeki's face and his Ryutsu surged. Level 3. Vanguard went wide-eyed as a slash came out and sliced off an entire chunk of his left pectoral. Kenpeki stood standing stolidly, bathed in a golden glow. But, how? Vanguard was frustrated. He saw that Kenpeki's blade was repaired. I'm damn sure I sliced that miserable piece of steel in half. My blade fixes itself every time I go up a level. And it seems your last blow put me over. I just didn't invoke it till I was ready to go at you again since I wanted to catch my breath. I've been getting a good workout and now I'm all warmed up. Also, I needed the kid to do some damage to Ya, bring Ya down a peg or two. As much as I enjoy fighting, I enjoy it on a more even playing field, and with all my injuries I needed to rest for a bit. I hate your guts, but you're giving me the fight of my life. Damn you, you're becoming a serious nuisance, Vanguard simmered. I told you, I'm not going to die without avenging Hikira, Kenpeki replied and charged back at Vanguard. Now let's do this thing. Vanguard and Kenpeki continued their clash of blades from where they left off, with Kenpeki continuously slashing away trying to look for an opening within Vanguard's defense, while the Seiko Koet took lumbering fierce blows to try and find gaps in Kenpeki's swings to perform a counter-attack. When he makes his first such attempt though, Kenpeki sidestepped the slash aimed at his chest rather than letting it cut him as usual. Not since his fight with his own Zanpakuto spirit did he ever consider dodging an attack. Vanguard swung his sword at the 11th Division Captain's eye line, but Kenpeki ducked underneath the swing, performed a backflip and then rushed forward and executed a wide swing, slashing Vanguard across the waist and slicing deep through the Togabito's torso, ripping into some of Vanguard's intestines in the process. Vanguard made no response or recoil in pain. He just healed the damage he could and stood his ground as he and Kenpeki traded serious strikes like Vanguard and Ichigo had done before. Each blow created explosive waves of Ryutsu. The already leveled meadows were getting leveled further with every blow, causing the immense Ryusta to be felt for miles and the battlefield become so dusty that it became hard to see the area. Damn, Kenpeki is really not holding anything back here, Ichigo spectated, closing one eye and putting up his arm to minimize the amount of dirt reaching his face. Now this is a real fight. Yachiru perked up. Back at the fight, Vanguard took a fierce horizontal swing at Kenpeki, but was blocked by the 11th Division Captain, and then Kenpeki ran towards Vanguard to perform his bifurcating two-handed swing, but as he neared the Seiko Koet, wary of the technique this time, fired a point-blank range, forcing the 11th Division Captain to use the power of his strongest slash to block against the Zero. The attacks wound up cancelling each other out, allowing Kenpeki to escape the attack with only second-degree burns on both his hands. He was in better condition than Vanguard though. That could have been worse, the Seiko mused to himself as he regrows both arms and grabbed his sword. You killed my senpai and now I get to kill you. How does it feel to know that the pinnacle of Hollow Evolution will lose to the hands of this civilian? Oh wait, Kenpeki pointed his index finger at Vanguard. Akari Mari was just a civilian before she became a Soul Reaper, wasn't she? How does that feel, you super-powered piece of shit? Don't get cocky just because you got a lucky shot. Vanguard had absolutely had it with Kenpeki. He wanted to waste no more time. The moment had come for him to finish this battle with the quickest method possible. Vanguard held up his sword and held it in front of his body. La Tekla. A dark green aura exploded around Vanguard's body. What the hell? Kenpeki asked, shocked to see the powerful Hollow using a resurrection-like technique. Impossible, where did he get a resurrection? I thought only Aaron Cars can use resurrections. Ichigo's eyes turned wide with shock. The release of Vanguard's form caused enough Ryusta to be felt up to the Sirite Eye. The powerful Seiko Koet emerged out of the smoke with his green eyes glowing as if they'd been heavily irradiated, but they were now accompanied by ivory white horns on his head with the hollow hole still on his chest. He had more muscles than ever before and had a boar-like build to his face, actually having a mouth. He also had hooves instead of boot-like feet. He still had glowing green veins running up his body. The immense spiritual power created a force so overwhelming that even the mighty captain of Squad 11 had a hard time standing unfettered from its release. The hollow completed its appearance out with two massive swords, each of the blades as long as Kenpei's entire body, with sized blades hooking up out of the V-shaped guard as Vanguard stood 3 feet taller than the late Captain Komamura. This is true power, the pinnacle of hollow evolution, only available to any hollow that would be able to reach the level of Seiko Koet. Vanguard stated, "I'm going to enjoy beating you down. Here I come, Zarkai Kenpei." Vanguard then attacked and Kenpei barely had time blink, let alone dodge. Kenpei, on instinct, managed to put up a defense against the massive blade with both hands on his Zanpakuto. However, with just a lackluster, single-handed strike and only one sword, Vanguard had concaved Kenpei 10 feet deep below the ground. "Is that all you got? I expected more," Vanguard said, and then sideswiped Kenpei with a fierce horizontal slash with his other sword, spilling Kenpei's blood like a shower head that had just been turned on. The remainder of the force trailed along the ground and then exploded into the air several meters high, about a kilometer away. "Kenpei!" Ichigo shouted. "Kenny!" Yachiro shouted in alarm. "You put up a good fight, however you've reached your limit, Zarkai Kenpei." Vanguard turned his body and took a massive leap to Ichigo and Yachiro's location. "And now to put the bones in the trash," Vanguard said to himself as he turns his attention to Ichigo and Yachiro. "Yeah. Your bones," Ichigo shouted as he puts on his hollow mask and goes to clash with Vanguard for the second time. Meanwhile, Yachiro rushes to Kenpei's aid. Kenpei was badly hurt from the attack, but he was still alive. Kenpei lifted his bloody hand up and managed to sit up. "Kenny, you're alive," Yachiro said to her father figure. "Yeah, barely. I'm not sure if I can hold out much longer, I need time to rest up again," Kenpei answered as he lays down on the ground trying to summon whatever remaining strength in his body to continue fighting. Ichigo would have to hold Vanguard for whatever time Kenpei was going to take. Back at the battle, Ichigo and Vanguard were now using their utmost full power to fight each other. Neither side had made a decisive attack yet. Vanguard was using both of blades to clash with Ichigo's hollow Ifed Tensei Zanjutsu. Both of them unleash powerful slashes, uplifting the ground around them, further cementing the once peaceful meadows into a chasm of destruction for the rest of eternity. Vanguard dodged a lunging stab from Ichigo and used his right hand to block a hooking slash aimed at his head, parrying Ichigo's hit. "Your power has improved greatly, Soul Reaper. Looks like you fully tamed that hollow inside you." "Yeah, I have, and I'm going to use all that power to cut your goddamn head off," Ichigo replied as he goes after the bestial hollow. Vanguard tried to parry, but Ichigo was still much faster, despite being outmatched in terms of strength, and managed a successful hit-and-run strike on Vanguard's chest, but it regenerated quickly. "Not bad, Kurosaki Ichigo. You might be a challenge after all." Ichigo knew he wouldn't be able to be a challenge for long though. "I only have about 4 minutes left in my Vizard mask. I can only maintain this mask for 5 minutes and 8 seconds, it's going to be tough beating him in this form, but hey, impossible odds," Ichigo grinned, "sounds like 100% to me." Ichigo said to himself, trying to look for the light at the end of this extremely dark tunnel, only to add more chastisingly, "I really need to lay off the anime." Ichigo went to stab Vanguard from above, but the black hollow blocked his strike and performed a horizontal slash with his right blade. Ichigo successfully blocked, if only to get sent flying through the air. Vanguard swung at Ichigo with a sweeping arc slash, but Ichigo put enough distance between him and Vanguard to remain completely out of harm's way. He then uses the fastest shunpo he could muster in such a small time frame to get right behind Vanguard and blasted him with all his might with a Getsuga Tensho. Ichigo cut deep into Vanguard's spinal cord, making it difficult for the Seiko Koet to regenerate the damage, or move. Now to end this. Ichigo shouted as he jumped into the air, points his blade at Vanguard, taking advantage that the powerful Seiko Koet was temporarily paralyzed. Ichigo prepared to unleash his most powerful attack. He took aim at Vanguard from the front, wanting to see the look on the Seiko's face when he blasted it right off. This attack would be point blank. The tip of his blade sparked as energy gathered in the center of the blade's tip, taking a spherical shape and the color scheme of Ichigo's Getsuga. Zero de Luna. Ichigo declared as loud as he could as he fired a powerful Zero right into Vanguard's face as the blast encompassed the entire hollow in a blanket of darkness. Damn it, Ichigo, I wanted to kill him, Kenpeki said as he struggles to get to his feet. Kenny, are you alright? Yachiru asked the 11th Division captain. I'm just peachy, Kenpeki answered as he looks depressed that he was robbed of his chance to get payback. However, as the smoke cleared up from the battlefield and Ichigo descended to the ground, removing his hollow mask when he touched the ground, it was revealed that Vanguard was almost completely unfazed by Ichigo's attack. In truth, Vanguard had been severely injured from the blast, but the time it took for the dust to clear had allowed him to regenerate all of his injuries. Still, the illusion of Ichigo inflicting no damage was an advantage Vanguard intended to exploit. What? Was that your strongest attack? It tickled. That was, Ichigo backed up now, finally feeling fear. My strongest attack, you're not even hurt. That's just not fair. What the hell are you? I'm the pinnacle of evolution. Did you really think I was fighting at full power all this time? I was merely toying with you and wanting to see what your hollow form was truly capable of. I'm severely disappointed in you, Ichigo. I thought you were like me and transcended beyond the barrier and dimension of Soul Reapers and Hollows, but it seems you haven't. You fail at evolution. The punishment for such a failure is death. Vanguard held up a blade to strike Ichigo, but is stopped by Kenpeki once again. My turn. Vanguard was about ready to have an aneurysm with Kenpeki jumping back into battle like he had just downed a cup of coffee. Oh, and by the way, level 4. Kenpeki shouted at the top of his lung, unleashing more Ryutsu. You can't be alive. Why don't you just stay down? Vanguard was starting to lose it. Cause he's a class of badass. Ichigo complimented Kenpeki with a smug grin. Damn straight. Kenpeki shouted and charged right at Vanguard, but the Seiko Koet dodged the blow. However, the residual shockwaves of Kenpeki's Ryutsu immobilized his opponent for half a second, giving him the opportunity to take a swing at the Seiko Koet's face. Unfortunately, Vanguard was able to block the blade with both swords just in the nick of time and pushed Kenpeki back. Vanguard swung his swords down vertically, creating a residual shockwave of Ryutsu which pushed back the 11th Division captain and allowed the Seiko Koet to get the chance to take a stab at Kenpeki's face with his right sword. Kenpeki stops the strike from happening by hacking upwards and clanging his blade against Vanguard's, pushing it up and letting Kenpeki zoom in towards his opponent. He performed a fierce horizontal slash at his enemy and cut him across the waist before he can make another strike. You're really becoming a nuisance. Vanguard stated as he swings down at Kenpeki only for the Soul Reaper to block yet again. So are you. I don't think I've met a more tenacious, big, black, and ugly cockroach than you. If I did, I'd probably give it to Kurotsuka to dissect because that is one bad cockroach. Kenpeki, of course, had no idea that Mayuri had been killed in action. Infuriated, Vanguard attacked again and again and again and again, beating down on Kenpeki's sword, unable to get through. How are we evenly matched now? I'm the pinnacle of hollow evolution. You're just a Runko guy rat. Does it matter? We're even. Let's enjoy the fight. Silence. I'm the perfect life form. I'm the pinnacle of hollow perfection. I won't lose or even be equal to the likes of you. Vanguard shouted. You're proving to be my greatest fight in my life, it's so bittersweet. I hate your guts for what you did to Hikira, and yet I'm enjoying this battle so much. Kenpeki exclaimed and then let out an insane scream of pure ecstasy. If you were a tin man, I'd send you back to Oz, in pieces. Kenpeki shouted as he charges at Vanguard. Die. Vanguard fired a Zero out of his mouth, but Kenpeki stands his ground and the Zero disintegrates against him, doing nothing except creating a small hole in the ground and kicking up a lot of dirt. Aggravated, Vanguard opens his mouth wider than before and charges another Zero. This one twitches and sparks in his mouth as he prepares to fire it. You think that zero is enough to stop me? Kenpeka said to Vanguard as he manages to hold back the zero a bit. That is exactly what I think. Vanguard thought to himself and fired off the nuclear zero 4 times more powerful than the one Kenpeka had stopped mere moments ago. This zero is at a far higher league than the one you previously stopped. Say goodbye, scum. Kenny. Yachiro shouted as she watches the explosion, barely able to withstand the Ryusta from the blast despite the distance between her and it. The smoke clears up to reveal Kenpeka with incredibly devastating third-degree burns on his chest and arms from the zero. The upper half of Kenpeka's Shiakusho had been burned off completely and the sleeveless haori he usually wore was completely disintegrated. While the burns had cauterized most of Kenpeka's wounds, Kenpeka was suffering regardless. He was at his absolute limit of durability. Kenpeka's body had grown stiff and he could barely move. Damn it, I can't move my body, arms feel like they've been deep-fried, chest feels like it weighs 100 kilos. Sorry Haruka, I failed you. Kenpeka said to himself as he watches the hollow slowly lift his right hand as if he was walking up the stairs to a guillotine-type execution as he is unable to move and about to embrace death as he falls forward towards the ground. Kenpeka! Ichigo shouted as he struggled to move his body from his wounds. Dash! Okad Kimono! Yachiro shouted as she transforms her sealed Zanpakuto into a double-edged kunao in between her teeth with a bite guard that allowed Yachiro to protect her jaw if she was kicked in the face while on all fours. Yachiro dashed in at high speeds and leapt into the air, managing to cut Vanguard in the eyes before he even caught a glimpse of her. Vanguard roared and recoiled as he became temporarily blinded by the strike and drops both his large swords to the ground and holds on to his eyes in pain. While the blow Yasura delivered wasn't anywhere close to being fatal, in fact it was the same effect as a human getting metal dust in their eye, it was still very painful. After all, for all his power and durability, anyone would be hurt from taking a strike to their eye. Kenny, are you okay? Yachiro shouted as she takes her shikai out of her mouth to talk and goes to grab Kenpeka. Yachiro, run away and save yourself. Kenpeka answered as he tries to warn Yachiro. Vanguard roared again as he smacks the little pink-haired girl with the back of his hand. Time seemed to slow and the moment flashed before Kenpeka's eyes as he saw Yachiro's body come in contact with Vanguard's massive hand. With the force from the blow, Yachiro was sent flying high into the air like a punted football only to crash hard onto the ground and tumble along it, taking severe damage due to the difference between her and Vanguard just from the contact and from the harshness that was gravity. Yachiro! Kenpeka shouted as Yachiro landed. No! Ichigo shouted as he ran to the girl's side. Vanguard roared again as he used high-speed regeneration on his eyes. You're going to pay for that. He grabbed his sword and separated Ichigo from Yachiro, as the two dogged to the side, but as he moved, Ichigo cringed from straining the wound in his back and Vanguard's next strike sliced him down from the top of his right shoulder down to his right hip. Strength draining from him, Ichigo dropped to his knees and fell to the ground. You bastard, Ichigo got out as he passed out. On the ground Kenpeka was having dismal thoughts. I can't save Yachiro, I couldn't save Haruka, I failed. In the end, I was too weak after all, Kenpeka said to himself as he lies down unable to move from his burns and wounds. Giving up? That's not like you. Fumetsu Seishin no Senso? You can't give up, everyone is counting on you to beat this monster and kick his ass straight to hell. If I could, I wouldn't be lying down here right now, would I? No, I suppose not. Kenpeka was alerted to a childish yell and noticed Yachiro firmly in Vanguard's grip. Yachiro! That girl is the only thing that has mattered to you besides fighting, Kenpeka. Are you going to fail her or are you going to get your ass up and prove to Hikira, by the time you eventually do fall in battle, that you can die with a smile on her face in a way that makes her proud of you? Vanguard held Yachiro in his fist. Yachiro's left eye was swollen and her other was black and blue. Her Shiakusho was covered in dirt and Yachiro looked like she was teetering on death's door with the bruises dealt to her body. So, any last words before I kill you? Vanguard asked the wounded child. K-N-N-Y, Yachiro replied, weak from the beating she received. Ha 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 ha. You must really be attached, Kenpeka, this should be fun killing you. I can't wait to see the manliest captain break down and start crying like a little. Vanguard's eyes tightened. Bitch. Vanguard laughed as he tossed Yachiru up into the air and prepared to fire a Zero so that it would catch her as she tumbled down since she was unable to gain control of her muscles at all. Goodbye. Vanguard shouted in his mind. Unfortunately for Vanguard, he wasn't the only one more tenacious than a cockroach. Just before the blast hit, with his last ounce of strength, Kenpei jumped into the air and pushed Yachiru out of the way and took the full brunt of the blast. KNNY. Yachiru looked at him with shock. She then noticed that Kenpei appeared to be smiling. Kenny. She fainted as she fell to the ground and bounced on it as she hit the ground. She would survive. Her injuries were less severe than Ichigo, but her smaller frame made her worse for wear. Kenpei survived the attack. His body was durable enough, but he hit the dirt a complete mess. Surprisingly, he had the strength to stand, but he was woozy. I grow weary of your interferences, Vanguard said calmly, but you're teetering on death's door. Zaraki Kenpei, you have no fight left in you. Maybe I don't have fight left in me, he said, maybe that blow finished me. The flames on his sword began to trickle up red. Maybe you win. The flames stopped about halfway. Or maybe I'm about to kick your ass. The sword went to its full peak and Kenpei shouted. Maximum. Kenpei's Ryotsu exploded as the metallic plating that covered his body in level 5 appeared around him. What's with this power? Impossible, how can anyone have this much power, much less just in a Shikai state? You're not dealing with the average Soul Reaper. I rise above the others. I am a legend, Kenpei boasted with a craggly, calm voice. I didn't have a true name until I met Hikira 170 years ago. I didn't think I needed one, but now I have one, and it's the one only given to those warriors who are the strongest ones of their generation. No matter how many times you put me down, I will get up. My name is Zaraki Kenpei and I never quit. Eager to put Kenpei down once and for all, incredibly tired with his mouth and boasting, Vanguard slashed at Kenpei's body with his other blade. It snapped off against Kenpei's metallic reinforced skin. That tickled. Kenpei replied, shrugging off the blow as he nonchalantly punches Vanguard straight through the stomach with his right hand, causing Vanguard to cough up blood and bile. Vanguard tumbled backwards and fell over. Kenpei advanced on the hollow that tried to mow him down by charging like a bull. My unfortunate friend, you're about to discover a war you're unable to win. I'll have you know, Kenpei said and held up his sword, that I've become indestructible. Kenpei slashed Vanguard's horn off, determination that is incorruptible. He cut off Vanguard's arm. Vanguard got on his hind legs and attacked Kenpei with his still connected arm. From the other side, a terror to behold, Kenpei grabbed his opponent's arm. Annihilation will be unavoidable. He tore off Vanguard's arm at the hinge. Every broken enemy will know that their opponent had to be invincible. Kenpei raised his Ryotsu as high as he could, preparing to split Vanguard in half. Take a last look around while you're alive. I'm an indestructible master of war. With his fierce double-handed slice, he split Vanguard in half and the halves fell along the ground. Kenpei disengaged Shikai and began to stumble and stagger about. Hikira, I finally avenged you and it seems like I'll be joining you soon enough as well. Sorry Yachiru, but it looks like Kenny is going away for a while. Kenpei felt the last of his strength leave him and fell forward. But suddenly a friendly body got underneath Kenpei as he began to fall forward and kept him from hitting the ground. Whew, I don't even want to know how close that was. Out of the corner of his eye, Kenpei could see a mammalian, brown ear, and the scent of fur filled his nostrils. Why Yuri? Kenpei's aide lowered him to the ground, revealing Rita to Kenpei. She began to give him some emergency first aid to sustain his injuries. She then looked around at the war-torn battlefield. Holy smokes, what did you guys do to this place? It's like me on a bad day when using Bankai, only 4 times worse. Cat's pajamas. She sighed and looked at Kenpei. Well, I guess that's why you're the Kenpei. She walked over to Vanguard's split halves as they were starting to fade in fast. She didn't have much time before she'd lose her claim. She acted quickly. By the power invested in me, I lay claim to your soul. She sucked Vanguard back to hell and wiped her brow. She then went over to help Ichigo to his feet and gave him some emergency first aid. Did you get to Yachiru yet? Heal her too. Rita's reaction indicated she had no idea Yachiru was even nearby, and when she pinpointed her gasped and then took delicate care in restoring her. Any sooner and they would have needed Orium. In fact, they still would. After stabilizing Yachiru and making yet another close call, Rita stood up again. You should get to the hideout and take these two with you. In your condition you'll be of no use in the final battle. Orium can do more help for you than I can. Kenpei got to his feet and flexed his hand, feeling healthy, but not at 100%. He then looked over at Ichigo. He grinned. I told that dumbass he should have let me handle the fighting. For the most part he did, from what I can feel from the residual Ryotsu in the area. Still, without his help you never would have taken Vanguard on your own, and I think you know that. Rita said. Yeah, Kenpei said, and hoisted Ichigo up over his shoulder and picked up the teen and Yachiru under his arms. So what are you going to do? Rita stretched her arms up over her head. Well, since your battle is the last one to be finished, I can relax for a few moments. Lelouch will need me soon, but his plan should be coming together shortly. I'll need to stretch in case I need to go to battle though. There's no telling if Lelouch's plan might fail. Lelouch's plan failing is just about as likely as me losing a fight, Kenpei grinned. Rita grinned too. I suppose that's true. Anyway, you should get Ichigo to his girlfriend before his condition worsens, that is if you ever want to cross blades with him again. Kenpei resisted the urge to let out a hearty laugh and kept it at a low chuckle. Anyway, I need to go and finalize the capturing of Aizen's allies. Rita snapped her fingers and a hell gate opened for her to enter. I'll be seeing you later. She entered the gate and disappeared. Kenpei, bored now, did as he saw was best and went to get Yachiru and Ichigo healed up by Orium. Aizen's inner sanctum. Lelouch grabbed a pawn of Aizen's and discarded it to the floor. Aizen was about to make his move, but appeared distracted for a moment. So she's come. Lelouch pondered Aizen's distraction, but then noticed the declination of Ryotsu in many districts of the Siriti and the same Ryotsu popping up in different locations quickly. Further investigation of that area through sensing Ryotsu indicated the defeat of the last of Aizen's allies, though Vanguard's fate was uncertain, though if Lelouch's plan was successful he could venture a guess the results. I see, so he's noticed. Will he say anything? So that's your plan, is it? Aizen asked. You're very cunning, Lelouch. Lelouch tried to play dumb. I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about. Diverting my attention while having Rita go around and pick up the pieces while you pluck my allies off one by one? I must say I didn't think you'd convince her to act. Aizen made his move. It matters not though. Rita does not have her Kushonada in the living world, and resealing us will take much out of her. By the time she has sealed them all up she will be too weak to fight me and you, and I will be the only ones still at full strength. Such a foolish move, Lelouch. I wouldn't exactly call it foolish. Everything is going according to plan, Lelouch said and moved his king. Checkmate. Aizen stared at the board. By moving his king, Lelouch put Aizen's king on direct confrontation with his queen, but that was not all. If Aizen moved his king towards Lelouch's left, Lelouch's rook would grab him, and if Aizen moved to the right, Lelouch's bishop lied in wait. Even if Aizen moved diagonally forward towards Lelouch's right, there was a knight prepared to stop him. And Aizen had no pieces with which to block Lelouch's queen. Aizen had never been so annoyed in losing a chess match. In fact, he was downright furious. Lelouch had more to plan and worry about, and he still beat him. Aizen flipped the table over and attacked Lelouch with his sword. Enough games. Lelouch held up his hand and blocked with a seemingly invisible shield and snapped his fingers, revealing that he had been in Bankai all along, and Aizen's blade now rested against a shield encompassing Lelouch's entire immediate vicinity. Lelouch had set up a double-layered kyoko. One for his Bankai's garments and the other for his entire body, and now he was using it and had blocked Aizen's strike. The barrier didn't hold, of course, and Lelouch retreated away towards the entrance, putting his back to it so Aizen could not get behind him. So you wish to move on to the main event? Very well. Your taunting is pointless. You had every opportunity to use your special power just then, but you didn't. You're lucky your barrier protects you from all around, for I was actually behind you when I struck. By this I conclude that your power of absolute obedience only works once on any given person, doesn't it? Lelouch didn't answer Aizen. Your silence speaks volumes, Lelich, but no matter. Aizen had regained his composure and held his blade casually in front of him at an angle. I will enjoy engaging you in battle once again. And this time, Aizen swung his blade out at his side. I will make sure to kill you. Bring it on, Lelich encouraged, punctuating every word and beckoning Aizen forward with his right index finger as he spoke. Oh, I shall, Aizen said with a smug grin. To be continued. Chapter 132, Lelich vs Aizen, Power of the Mind. Third-person POV. Aizen's inner sanctum. Lelich stood firmly to face Aizen only for a gash to cleanly cut down his torso. What? But Aizen's still over there. Panicking, Lelich retreated to the far corner of Aizen's sanctum and put up his full area shield. There. Now I would have to see my barrier collapse in order for Aizen to attack me. Aizen didn't move from the spot he was in earlier and Lelich waited and watched only for his helmet to shatter. What? Panicking again, Lelich began zipping around the throne room using random bursts of Shunpo, trying to think simultaneously. Need to run around. I need to run around and think at the same time. I know Kyoka Suijutsu can manipulate my 5 senses, but to think it was to this extent. No matter though, I'm not trying to beat Aizen. I only need to hold out for a little while longer. Lelich was suddenly thrown into the wall without warning and Aizen still stood, at least to Lelich's perception, in the center of the room, sword still swung out at his side. I have to focus, Lelich's thought rapidly, I have to focus. I need some sort of plan. Lelich tensed up, closing his eyes. I need to relax. I can't fight Aizen if I'm not calm. Lelich let out a deep breath. He used another burst of Shunpo to get near his barrier at the front of the hall, guessing that Aizen was about to attack him so he needed to move or he'd get hit. Aizen hadn't made a move on Lelich though at that moment. He was enjoying the young-looking captain's panic and waiting to see what he would do. He already had Lelich rattled, he figured the fight was as good as won. Lelich found his still point as he stood with his feet together, eyes still closed, arms spread out in a V formation, parallel with the ground, palms facing the ground. I am a thing. I am a thinking thing. Whenever I think I exist. I exist, therefore I am. I may have a body, but there is no guarantee of such a thing. I have a mind though, that is undeniable. I cannot trust my senses. I can regain that trust if God exists and if God is benevolent. In the realm of Kyoka Suijutsu, Aizen plays God. I am against God, so therefore, I will not use my senses. Lelich flared up his Ryutsu. Iin Tamashi. You called? I need you to focus your power to minimize the bleeding to my wounds. Done. I also need you to try and keep my eyes closed. Do not allow me to open them unless I specifically ask you to let me. Done. Anything else? One more thing, don't comment on my actions. I'm about to fight using pure logic and sense of mind, so I need to be completely alone in my thoughts. Your wish is my command. This all part of some Grandmaster plan to beat Aizen, though that's more difficult with what you're asking me to do. Not a plan to win, no, but it's a plan to survive. Lelich's Ryutsu flared even more and he maximized his output. He put up his barrier around him and counted to himself. Aizen may have control of my senses, but my mind is still my own. As long as I have that, I can fight him. Now, if I were Aizen, I'd be smug enough to let me have my moment's peace, and now that I've watched my opponent actively put up a defense, I'd attack just about now. Lelich waited a few seconds and then used a burst of Shunpo to dash forward and to the side, putting himself behind and to the right of the throne if one were facing the throne from the entrance. Aizen noticed this and took note how Lelich escaped him so easily, but shrugged it off. If I were Aizen, I'd take a few moments to wonder if what my enemy did before was luck or guesswork and then attack again, now. Lelich took to the air, summoned an array of fireballs, before combining the ability with his telekinesis and attacked the area around where he had just been standing. Aizen was forced away from his current location and Lelich used Shunpo to get along the wall, using Ryutsu to allow him to remain flush along the flat surface as though he were a ninja. His eyes remained closed. That's the second time he's dodged my attack. Just what is he up to? His eyes are closed, but with Kyoka Suijutsu it's not as if he'd try to hear for the direction of my blade swinging at him. I'm making sure I'm absolutely silent in that regard. He's also not even letting me graze him. Just what is he doing? Aizen's probably still contemplating my last evasion. He's probably wondering how I'm evading him. Depending on which angle he attacked me from will depend on how quickly he can reach me, but in that case, Lelouch spread his hands out. Shikumo. All around him the black fog emerged, cloaking Lelouch in any angle except the safe zone within his immediate vicinity. This will make Aizen hesitate to strike, and that's what'll make my deception all the easier. Bakudo 26, Kyoko. Lelouch cloaked his full body yet again and then wrapped himself up in his cape and appeared in the air above the entrance. He gingerly put his fingertips against the space where he believed the entrance was. His barrier was still there, though there was no way of guaranteeing that. After all, I cannot trust my senses. Aizen, however, had not destroyed the barrier and had just found that Lelouch had completely vanished as per Kyoko, and the black fog licked at Aizen's skin, cutting him slightly. Aizen evaded away from the area. Lelouch had deceived him yet again, and now he had no sight of him. Aizen's probably frustrated about my deception right about now. I'm going to go on my belief that the barrier is still here. Aizen had plenty opportunity to destroy it, but logic follows that since he has been following my movements and predictions to the letter, that it is probably still here. Lelouch made the barrier vanish. It was hard to tell it was there in the first place without touching it, so when Aizen rushed forward, as Lelouch predicted he would, to shatter it, believing Lelouch had escaped, Aizen sliced through absolutely nothing, feeling bewildered momentarily and creating a rare opening that Lelouch exploited with the utmost care and brilliance. In one swift motion Lelouch dropped to the floor on a three-point landing, charged the most energy he could into his fist, took it and rammed it into Aizen's back before launching a fireball into Aizen's back, actually injuring the second most powerful Togabito and blasting him out into the hall of his great throne. Lelouch had seen the hall upon his way towards Aizen. He didn't need his eyes to familiarize himself with it again. He had taken the time to memorize the layout on principle before he confronted Aizen. The hallway had blue carpet with grey cobblestone walls and a wooden ceiling. Nothing special, and it reached up to about 9 feet high with regular fluorescent lights lighting it up. Aizen, as he hit the dirt, coat torn open revealing the most irritating minor burn on his back, only breaking the skin in some places, was very irritated with Lelouch right about now. He still couldn't see or sense Lelouch because of the cast Kyoko, and he had no idea how Lelouch was combating the illusionary perception throw-off created by Kyoka Suijutsu. Aizen got to his feet and took a look around the hall for Lelouch. In order to be hit from behind, Aizen figured Lelouch would have to be in the hallway unless he was still in the throne room and was waiting for Aizen to make a move so he could counter-attack. Though Aizen had not caught on to Lelouch's little game, whatever it was, he wasn't about to fall for it again. He sheathed his sword and spoke. "I'm not playing your game anymore, Lelouch. You want to continue this fight, why don't you take the lead for once?" Lelouch let the words sink in. He knew Aizen would not attack him right now. That fit in perfectly with his perception of Aizen's character, but he wasn't about to trust a thing Aizen said, nor could he trust that Aizen had actually sheathed his sword. If he was going to make a move, he'd make it count. However, Lelouch wasn't about to play into Aizen's hands. In fact, if he said anything at all, it would give away his location. His only option was to attack Aizen, but how? Lelouch envisioned the layout of the hallway and did his best to think. It wasn't very wide from his remembrance. Renji's Bankai would be able to fit through it lengthwise, but not if it was coiled up, and Kanjiki Ashisagiza would never fit in the hallway at all. Lelouch also thought about the option Aizen had if Lelouch continued to remain silent. Aizen could casually walk down the hallway in an attempt to find Lelouch and attack with each step. Still, Aizen would have to remain on this straightaway, and in this narrow space Lelouch had a huge advantage. He thrust his arm forward and activated his telekinesis. He didn't know if he had actually grappled Aizen, his senses told him such, but Lelouch, of course, could not trust them. He banged Aizen against either wall with his telekinesis before tossing him through the hallway and out into the foyer. Lelouch activated his shield and dashed forward using his cape to glide through the air. If Aizen hadn't been thrown, his shield would begin pushing him since it took up the entire hallway space, and Aizen would be able to pull back and attack Lelouch. If Lelouch was hit, he'd cease his advancements immediately and drop to the ground and pull back, but if he made it out into the foyer, which he did, it would only further his distinction that Lelich had a significant advantage in psychological warfare right now. Lelich kept Kyoko on him as he stood in front of the entrance between the foyer and hall. The foyer of Aizen's sanctum was very intricate and a lot roomier than the throne room. There were lots of marble pillars acting as support beams and the blue carpeting still covered the area. There were 4 small fountains in the room with steps leading up to them and a large stone statue of Aizen stood in the center. The statue of Aizen had him standing with his arms folded, smiling. Aizen was a little more than a meter in front of the statue and tried to deduce Lelich's thought process and where he could possibly be coming from next or what he would try. He was rather peeved at the 10th Division captain. Aizen had never run into an opponent that could counter his Kyoka Suijutsu so easily. He thought about using his Bankai, but, no, it would be a waste. Lelich's Ryutsu was still vastly inferior to his own, even with Zero no Seishin no Iin Tamashi. Lelich, figuring that Aizen would not be attacking any time soon and, again, wait for Lelich to make a move first, decided to have a little fun with the High Trader and use his current invisibility to his advantage to screw with Aizen a little. His psyche had to be at the breaking point and if Lelich could make Aizen lose his cool, he'd consider that a victory. Lelich decided he'd steal a page from Rita's book to make his plan work. He warped by one of the pillars. As long as he was invisible, Aizen might think Lelich may have developed some sort of omnipotence over the area. "What's the matter, Aizen?" Lelich projected his voice to make sure it echoed. He then warped above the statue. "Can't hit what you can't see." He warped to another location. "I wouldn't be so smug if I were you, Lamperouge Lelich. It's only a matter of time before I figure out what sort of gimmick you're employing and once I do you are going to be feeling the sting of my sword." Aizen spoke calmly, but Lelich's taunt had made him twitch slightly. "That'll be what, when my grandkids have tombstones?" Lelich asked from over by one of the fountains. Iin Tamashi laughed. She had used that line a long time ago. Lelich then deliberately splashed the water before warping away to make Aizen attack with Shakkeiho. He was now all the way on the other side of the room up in the corner. "You missed." Aizen did his best to stifle growling and scowling. He would not lose his cool to Lelich. He would not give him that satisfaction. "I bet this is the first time you've ever had such a problem with an opponent, isn't it?" Lelich, by his prediction, and also factually, was now directly in front of Aizen. Aizen swung his sword out, but Lelich warped away before Aizen had even begun to attack. "Quit hiding!" Aizen called out loudly, raising his voice. "What's wrong, Aizen? Don't like it when other people deceive you? People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, though for you perhaps it should be people who build stained glass windows." Iin Tamashi cackled with laughter. Lelich was being very comical. "That's not funny. I'm laughing." Lelich was getting a kick out of this. He now understood why Iin Tamashi quipped at him so much and why CC enjoyed being so snarky, moments like this. It was almost as if being on the receiving end, and thereby having the exposure to understand how to utilize such a tactic, had prepared him for this moment. Stop. I can't breathe. Iin Tamashi laughed herself silly. All right, I'll focus on being serious. Can't have you ruining everything by not carrying out what I asked you to now, can I?" Aizen actually growled, causing Lelich to smirk. At this point he was willing to at least trust his hearing. He'd been right thus far about Aizen, so there was very little reason for him not to believe that he wasn't hearing things. Lelich used his cape's teleport to reach the front entrance that led to outside. "Do I anger you, Aizen?" Lelich asked. He moved again so that he was hovering above Aizen and so that he was facing in Aizen's general direction with the statue still behind Aizen. "No." Aizen was trying to salvage what little patience he had left with Lelich. "Come out where I can see you." Lelich moved to a completely random location, not even knowing where he was in the room, but all he had to do was know Aizen's location and he'd be okay. "And give away my location." Lelich moved again. "Surely you jest." He moved again. "Face it, Aizen, I have the ability to fight you even with Kyoka Suijutsu active. All I had to do was discard my senses." Lelich had a feeling Aizen's response would be, "You're bluffing. No one can discard their senses and rely completely on instinct. It's absurd." Eisen was smirking at the audacity Lelich would have to make such a claim. Lelich kept up his sarcastic confession as he changed location, and yet that's the whole reason you've yet to hit me once after the initial 2 times. My calmness and serenity has let me fight without trusting my senses at all. I'm fighting using my brain, the one thing Kyoka Suijutsu cannot control. Eisen hadn't to come back and grit his teeth and stifled the urge to lose his temper. Stunned silence? Now that's quite the surprise. Normally you love to talk, Eisen. No witty retort? No calm magnificent speech of grandeur to tell me how you are superior to all in every way. Lelich was outright mocking Eisen and pushing Eisen to his breaking point. Eisen was finding it increasingly difficult not to lose his cool. Lelich would not make him crack. Of course, Lelich kept on the verbal offensive and continued to ridicule Eisen as he reappeared in a straight line in front of Eisen. No. Lelich asked smugly and with a smirk, then it seems I've made a grand feat by leaving you absolutely speechless. I should mark this date on my calendar. Iin Tamashi burst out laughing again. Right, forgot, need to be serious. Or perhaps, Lelich hovered into the air and walked on it so that his steps would not echo in the hall as he walked in a wide arc towards Eisen's left flank. You have something to say, but wish not to say it. You seem to be at your breaking point. You don't want to give me the satisfaction of watching you crack under pressure. Or maybe more likely, Lelich extended his arm towards Eisen, though his gesture was invisible to all, you simply do not wish to admit that I am superior. You are not. Eisen unleashed a Sakasui blast in Lelich's general direction, which Lelich dodged by using a teleport to get behind Eisen's statue. He put his hand against the back of it and leaned backwards onto it, facing the entrance, eyes still closed. You missed again. And at that point something in Eisen snapped. Lelich's taunting had finally gotten to the man and Eisen was at his breaking point. You want to see a miss? Using the power of Kyoka Suijutsu, Eisen had dozens upon dozens of blades shoot from the walls and fire in every direction. Unprepared for such an onslaught, Lelich was ridden along his arms and legs and his blood spilled all along the statue, giving away his location. Using his Ryutsu, Eisen broke Lelich's Kyoko, found him, grabbed a hold of him by the neck and threw him with all of his might at the wall above the entrance to the Togabito's sanctum. Lelich was barely able to get to his feet and Eisen rushed him down and stabbed him through the gut with Kyoka Suijutsu, charged Ryutsu into the blade, withdrew it and blasted Lelich outside with a Reikoho blast. Lelich went sailing to the edge of the walkway around the entrance and nearly fell off the battlements 150 meters to the ground. He was sitting on his ass, battered and bruised against the low-rising battlement. With tremendous effort he got up and clutched his left shoulder as his left arm hung down at his side like a limp noodle. I'm going to need my sight back. Focus your efforts more on my bleeding. I was about to ask about that. You're a mess right now. Yeah, I can feel. Lelich replied. He opened his eyes and saw Eisen walking towards him slowly, but his face was rife with undulated anger. Lelich laughed. Even now you laugh, Eisen said, advancing on Lelich, I am going to kill you in a matter of minutes and all you can do is laugh at me. The stoic manner Eisen generally carried himself with was gone and replaced with ire and contempt towards the one Soul Reaper with the audacity to challenge him with such words and doubt the man's superiority. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at the situation. It's a reflexive, nervous laugh. Whatever. Do you have any last words before I eviscerate you? A speech perhaps? I know you're so fond of giving them. Now Eisen was the one mocking Lelich, but rather than a calm, smug smirk, Eisen's lip was twitching at the corner. Lelich looked around and saw a flash of red high up in the sky that was getting closer and closer by the second. He extended his Ryutsu senses out towards the flicker, recognized the sensation and looked back at Eisen with a bloodied smile. Yeah, I do. 3. Lelich sucked in a breath and exclaimed, bait and switch. Eisen was unsure what Lelich was talking about, but then, out of nowhere, well technically Lelich had seen it coming, but Eisen hadn't the faintest idea, a flaming fist came and punched Eisen right in the face so hard that some of his skin came clean off and Eisen was sent careening off his castle towards the trees he had grown around it below. Standing in front of Lelich, shirtless, bald with a long white beard, numerous scars across his body and, holding a fiery blade to match his flaming battle aura, was the late Tsuteiko, Yamamoto Shijiko ni Genri Yusai. Having been pulled out of storage, much like Akari Mari, Yamamoto was continuing the geese order he was given, to fight Aizen's army until it was impossible to do so. And that is why I was Tsuteiko, you smug whippersnapper. Yamamoto bellowed. Lelouch slumped onto his knees in fatigue. He smiled at Yamamoto. It's good to see you again, sir, even if it's only temporary. Yamamoto dropped his hands at his sides and pulled out his walking stick. The feeling is mutual. Aizen suddenly reappeared back on the castle with his face bleeding where Yamamoto had punched him. In a flash, Mari appeared between Yamamoto and Lelouch, still only at 30% her power, and began to help Lelouch get up. Take him outside this battlefield, Yamamoto told the late captain as he turned to face Aizen. Right away, Mari said, and used Shunpo to carry Lelouch away so she could heal him, but, more importantly, so he couldn't get in Yamamoto's way. I see, Aizen laughed nervously, still a little off-put by Lelouch's deception and taunts. This whole time Lelouch was a decoy. I don't know who you are, but there is no way you can be the head captain. Oh really? Yamamoto barked back. I think you just don't wish to admit the mistake you made. Mistake? I didn't make any mistakes. Aizen scowled. Yamamoto snorted. You have a lot to learn. The power of the Warden of Hell, whoever he or she may be, has more responsibilities than keeping brats like you in check. Compared to Yamamoto, pretty much every living Soul Reaper was a brat or a whippersnapper or a child. The Warden is in charge of the reincarnation process after death, as well as determining if corrupt souls become hollows or go to hell. Or become hollows and then go to hell. You're telling me the Warden has the power to restore the dead? Aizen asked in contemptuous disbelief. Nothing so perfectly necromantic, Yamamoto told him. My existence is the summation of my will to utterly crush you. Once you are defeated, I will be gone. I defeated you once before. I can do it again. You had help, and I should warn you, I am as dead as you are now, so the protection you obtain from half-living beings such as Soul Reapers is null and void. Do you still wish to cross blades with me? I have not come so far only to retreat from you. I will be victorious. I will do what I should have done ages ago, fought you for head captaincy, despite your overwhelming power in direct combat. Yamamoto grunted in mockery, you don't have the ability to contend with me, boy. If that's what you believe, then let us test that belief. I'm ready when you are, Yamamoto said. He vanished his walking stick into his Zanpakuto, drew his blade out and manifested his Shikai without calling out the release command, and then turned the blade upside down and slammed the weapon into the ground in front of him as the flames burned brightly like an out-of-control campfire. If that's your angle, then I will not hold back an inch either, Aizen said, and put his sword away and then grabbed the sheath hole and held the entire blade and scabbard up in front of his face. He clutched the handle with one hand and clenched the scabbard with the other. Both combatants shouted the two syllables needed to intensify their battle at the exact same time. Ban. Kai. Elsewhere in the Sirite, Lelouch lay underneath the warm glow of healing Kido. He had blacked out as Mari had carried him and now was opening his eyes to the sight of a calm forest. However, Mari was not the one healing him, it was Kyokaku. Mari was nearby, Lelouch could sense her, but she was sitting on a rock, staring in the direction of the battle about to ensue. That has to be one of the biggest gambits you have made. Damn it, you could have just as easily been killed. Kyokaku's tone of voice was jubilant. She seemed genuinely proud of her captain. Lelouch tried to sit up, but Kyokaku pushed him flat on his back. Stay down. You're not ready to move yet. Lelouch tilted his head back and sighed. What's the damage report? Kyokaku sighed. We lost Shinji and Rose. She told him. Lelouch was silent for a moment only to reply with, I see. Izuru sacrificed himself in his battle, and as far as we know everyone else is getting patched up in 4th Division. Lelouch let out a relaxed breath. That's a relief. That's good, that means Yuna, Susanna, and Nimue are all alive. Kyokaku, if you could heal me up as soon as possible, please do so. You're not thinking of going back out there, are you? Only at the end, Lelouch said, placing his right arm over his stomach. I want to be there to witness Aizen's defeat. Just patch him up and I'll take him back out. Yamamoto Genryu Saisama never said anything about showing up to the end of the battle. Lelouch was only now noticing Mari's attire. Akari senpai, what happened to your... Mari looked back at Lelouch. She turned around. Oh, I used most of my power Rita allocated me with to beat Treva down. I have about 30% of reserves left, though once this is over I'll be returning to storage anyway, so it's inconsequential. Lelouch looked back up at the sky. I see. It's over and done with, Lelouch, we've won this, Mari said. After all, things are going exactly according to your plan. The area formerly known as 1st Division. Due to the Ryotsu explosion caused by both combatants, Yamamoto and Aizen were now high in the air. The castle Aizen had built disintegrated by their power and the surrounding trees having turned to ash. With the troll spirit in his back and the 10 flaming weapons extending from its arms, Yamamoto thundered loudly, Ryujin Jaka Muogenakari. He then took a look around. Save for a faint glow coming from Aizen's blade, the scabbard having disintegrated, Yamamoto couldn't see or sense any changes in Aizen's appearance or the battlefield. I thought you released your Bankai. I did, Aizen stated. Can't you see it? Aizen bent his left arm backwards and casually pointed up and behind him. Yamamoto squinted into the distance and saw a faint white line-like trail following a moving jet. He then noticed that the line was not a line, but an arc, and the arc seemed to create a gigantic circle that encompassed all around him, Aizen, and the surrounding area. What is that? That, Aizen emphasized, is the spatial limit of which my Ryotsu extends within the space of my Bankai. Inside my Bankai, the entire space that my Ryotsu extends towards is under my complete control, such as the grand power of Suisho Kyoka Kote Juijetsu. Crystal Mirror Flower, Solid Water Moon. What are you insinuating? Yamamoto asked. Instead of an explanation, how about a demonstration? Aizen asked, and with an emanation of light from his blade as he held it up, the area around Yamamoto became tense with Aizen's Ryotsu, and the entire area around the old warrior Komu stead and detonated as the space was distorted, much like when Mari activated her full power against Treva. Having been caught in the blast, unprepared for the assault, Aizen was sure that Yamamoto was going to take a hefty beating. But such was not the case. Instead, Yamamoto appeared unharmed and in his Shogun form. Was that your best shot? Impossible. Aizen could only think the one word before Yamamoto was on him with a fierce blow to the stomach before slashing him with his flaming sword, stepping quickly to get behind Aizen and bashing the pommel of the weapon into Aizen's back before turning around and punching Aizen hard in the back and sending Aizen smashing into a crater. Yamamoto then used the little dragons coiling around his legs to fire darts of flame at the crater to put the pressure on Aizen in case he got up, only for Aizen to come rocketing out of the crater and the flames dissolving as they got within Aizen's personal space. Aizen's blade gave off a flash of light and suddenly he made 3 carbon copies of himself. Each Aizen stood to either side and in front and behind Yamamoto. They all struck forward with their swords, only for Yamamoto to create a twister of flames around himself. But the flames died out almost immediately and Yamamoto was surprised when all 4 Aizens slashed him, and then Yamamoto felt a telekinetic force drag him straight into the ground and press him into it as the ground seemed to come alive and bound him to the ground as the earth rose up around him and packed down onto him like a blanket of dirt. Yamamoto burned away the dirt with the dragons around his legs and got away from Aizen before the man lopped his head off, only for a blanket of black fog to obscure his vision. A little something I adapted from Talbumasuk, Aizen mused to himself, though it won't be nearly as powerful. The blanket of fog swarmed about Yamamoto and crushed him within the tightening space. Yamamoto was now seeing the full force of Aizen's Bankai. Unlike Kyoka Suijutsu, which Aizen could use to deceive others, Suisho Kyoka Kote Juijetsu could manipulate every last speck of matter and energy in the air, regardless of Aizen's opponent's strength. Even against opponents more powerful than himself, Aizen could manipulate the entire space around them and turn it into a weapon. In essence, his illusions were real. He was limited only by the power of his own imagination of what he could do with that power. Incredibly weak opponents could be completely pulled apart atom by atom. Yamamoto was lucky he did not fall into that category. However, such things would make the battle against Aizen incredibly difficult, since Aizen could simply dispel Yamamoto's flames and it would happen, or turn them into harmless water, perhaps take control of the flames and redirect them. Aizen had complete control and Yamamoto was slowly learning this. Aizen dismissed his clones and Yamamoto came off Aizen's attack damaged and panting heavily. Both men were on the ashen, war-torn ground. Such vigor and endurance, but I guess that's how you got to be head captain. It amazes me that I was so afraid to take you on. With my Bankai none can stop me. I wouldn't be so confident in that, Yamamoto brushed off. I will crush you under Ryujinjaka's power. You are welcome to try. Yamamoto charged at Aizen and swung, but Aizen vanished on the spot and suddenly a gigantic white sword appeared and slashed Yamamoto, but the head captain used his massive Ryutsu to brush the attack off. Aizen attacked from behind to stab Yamamoto, but the heat given off by Yamamoto's burning wings alerted him to Aizen's presence and the dragon heads facing away from Yamamoto shot flames at the former captain of the 5th Division and burned his legs. Yamamoto turned on a dime and slashed Aizen with his flame blade as Aizen dodged away from the swing. With a wave of his hand Aizen removed all the flames from Yamamoto's sword. Seeing that his weapon was now useless, Yamamoto discarded the bladeless weapon and dashed forward to attack Aizen with his fists. Aizen blocked Yamamoto's left fist with his sword as he held it up in front of his face, horizontally. Yamamoto pulled his left arm back and punched forward with his right. Aizen spun to the side and attacked Yamamoto's left arm. Yamamoto turned, grabbed Aizen's blade with his hand and actually managed to bend the Togabito's blade before backhanding Aizen the face with his other fist. As Aizen recoiled, Yamamoto let fly a flurry of rapid punches into Aizen's stomach before drawing back a single fist and charging it with energy. Heido 88, Hiri Yujikazoku Shintenreiho. With a single hand Yamamoto fired the monstrous electrical energy into Aizen and sent him flying. Yamamoto noticed, due to the distance that Aizen moved, that the boundary of his Bankai went with him. It appeared to be that depending on Aizen's location that the man was always the center of the controlled space of his Bankai's influence. That's how he knew that Aizen was coming back when the boundary shifted again and Aizen appeared in front of him. You have broken my blade. I can't say I'm happy about that, Aizen said calmly. Yamamoto merely sneered and took a left lead stance. Aizen discarded the weapon and stood with his hands in his pockets. Oh well, it's not like I need the weapon in order to control this space. I need only my mind. Aizen then proceeded to evaporate his own upper body clothing and expanded his muscle mass so that it was on par, though perhaps a little bulkier than his opponent, only to replace his clothes to him so that they fit over his more muscular form. Yamamoto was understandably confused by this. If I cannot use my sword, and neither can you, I will simply have to take you unarmed. I see your confusion. Did you think that I could not affect myself within my own space? Yamamoto wanted to ask if it was necessary for Aizen to remove his clothes in order to apply the change, but decided against it. The sooner Aizen was gone, the sooner no one, save Rita and the Togabito, would have to put up with him. He simply beckoned Aizen forward with a wave of his hand. Aizen and Yamamoto dashed towards each other and began delivering punch and kick after punch and kick. Yamamoto delivered a fierce blow to Aizen's stomach with his knee and Aizen recoiled, recovered, and punched Yamamoto in the face. Yamamoto belted a left hook at Aizen, who ducked underneath and performed a tripping kick at Yamamoto's ankle. As he tripped, Yamamoto stuck his leg out to kick Aizen's rigid left leg, further injuring Aizen's wounded appendage. As Aizen dropped to his knee from the searing pain, Yamamoto punched him in the face. Aizen recovered and performed a roundhouse kick into Yamamoto's stomach, knocking him away. Yamamoto recovered using his form's wings and then flapped them repeatedly to create a heat wave of flame. Aizen held up his hand and used his power to dissipate all of Yamamoto's flames. However, the attack was a decoy, so Yamamoto could get behind Aizen and elbowed him in the back before appearing over his head and bringing his hands over Aizen's head like a sledgehammer and sending the tyrant slamming into the ground again. Yamamoto dropped to the ground and rushed Aizen, but the white-clothed warrior jumped above Yamamoto and then, as he got behind him, he turned and kicked Yamamoto in the side of the head. Yamamoto recoiled and retaliated and rushed at Aizen as the two locked their fists against each other, their faces extremely close. Aizen had his usual smug on and Yamamoto sneered in hate at his opponent. After a short while, it didn't take Yamamoto a while to realize that Aizen was slowly overpowering him. A black, formless, solid shadow rose up from behind Aizen and Aizen let go and the shadow dove forward and slammed into Yamamoto and took him into the sky before disconnecting with him and sending him flipping through the air. Yamamoto came off the strike as he saw hundreds of swords coming at him at incredibly fast speeds. With only his fists, Ryutsu, and Shunpo, Yamamoto knocked away, dodged and took small nicks all along his arms from Aizen's onslaught. Aizen reappeared behind Yamamoto and prepared to attack again. Aizen created a clone of himself and his clone began to catch fire almost immediately. Hado 96, the clone said as it began to burn completely, Ito Kaso. The crematory blade went blasting towards Yamamoto to skewer him in half, impacting right into the middle of the old man. Of course, Yamamoto was not the type of man to be beaten by a single level 90 Hado. He grasped the Kido with both of his hands as he was pushed to the edge of Aizen's Bankai where a wall of spikes had materialized completely out of nowhere. As he bled all down the center of his body, Yamamoto prepared to make a counter-attack as he fed his Ryutsu into the blade and, with willpower alone, overpowered Aizen's attack. As he panted, Aizen came from behind Yamamoto's right shoulder with a dive kick. Yamamoto turned, grabbed Aizen's leg and threw him towards the ground. He got down onto the ground and prepared his own retaliatory attack. He drew back his hands and prepared to strike as his hands swirled with flame, preparing to use the same attack he did on Kurosaki Ichigo's inner hollow. Due to the wind pressure, Aizen could not avoid the attack. Masa Yoshien. The destructive blast wave of fiery energy erupted from in between Yamamoto's arms as he engulfed Aizen in his attack. Of course, most of the attack was disintegrated as it neared Aizen since the man had complete control of the surrounding area. Aizen flipped through the air and somersaulted over Yamamoto's head and his hand glowed blue. Hado 77, Tentsubasa. The gigantic blade-like Kido was swung down at Yamamoto, who grabbed it with his bare hands and used its connection to Aizen to yank the man towards him and then punched Aizen in the face again. He followed up to punch Aizen in the stomach again, only for his opponent to suddenly materialize a wall of spikes, forcing Yamamoto to take to the skies over it, and found Aizen rising to the same altitude at the same speed. Yamamoto and Aizen punched at each other, their fists hitting against each other. They both performed high kicks, their legs connecting only to turn in the opposite direction and drive their elbows at each other, creating an impact once again. Yamamoto then performed a sneak attack with the flame of the dragon on his leg, and Aizen moved away from his attacker only for Yamamoto to appear behind him, grab Aizen's right arm and yank it taut, only to bring his elbow down on Aizen's elbow, shattering the bone. He then planted his foot firmly into Aizen's back, sending him slamming into the ground as Aizen's face and hair skid along the dirt. Yamamoto descended quickly to the ground to follow up on his opponent. Aizen's right arm was completely broken and he couldn't move it at all. "Give up, you've lost. You cannot fight me as an equal any longer." "I wouldn't be too sure of that." Aizen then used his Bankai to build up energy into an orb in front of him and create a Zero-like blast to decimate Yamamoto. With the energy he put into it, Yamamoto had no choice but to block. If he dodged, it would endanger the lives of others, and for Yamamoto things couldn't get much worse regarding the condition his life was in. He braced for impact and was pushed back along the ground, receiving heavy damage as Aizen dashed in, with no concern of his right arm's condition, to follow up to bash Yamamoto with his good arm. As he neared, though, he was caught off guard as Yamamoto's arm reached through the dust and grabbed Aizen by the lapels of his uniform, yanking him forward before grabbing him by the hair and smashing him into the ground. Aizen rolled away as Yamamoto tried to punch through the man's skull and pushed himself up off the ground with his good arm, but he had given Yamamoto the time he needed to utilize his counter-attack. Bakudo 99, Kin. Aizen was sealed up by the bands, but he simply smirked and dissolved them with the use of his Bankai's power. He looked around only to notice that Yamamoto had taken high into the air and had pulled his hands back to charge up another attack. Aizen figured he would simply dodge when the attack neared, only to notice just how much energy Yamamoto was putting into his attack. He wouldn't dare release his attack with that much energy put into it. He'll nuke the entire Soul Society. Unfortunately for Aizen, in his arrogance and rattled psychological state still present from his fight with Lelouch, he didn't count on one little detail. In the next moment, after charging up his attack, Yamamoto used a burst of Shunpo to get right within point-blank range of Aizen and unleashed his attack upwards at him. For Aizen that would be the end, and Yamamoto could sense it. The ring that formed his Bankai's limit shrunk down and returned to Aizen, recreating Kyoka Suijutsu's sealed form. Yamamoto hadn't done something like, say, blown Aizen's torso off his legs, but it was enough. Yamamoto blasted straight through Aizen's Ryotsu, his coat, his muscles, and his torso. Aizen was singed completely. His entire body was smoking and he was bleeding all over. He fell backwards onto the ground drastically injured. Yamamoto disengaged his Bankai, the fight was over. However, Aizen refused to give in. Quickly he leapt to his feet and charged towards Yamamoto, but his punch was stopped not by the old man, but by Rita Jinanga. That's enough, Aizen. It's over. You lost. Give up. Never. I refuse to go down. I will not be denied what is mine. What's yours? If it could have been any voice Aizen heard, that was the last one he wanted to. He turned and Rita let go of his hand as Aizen glared at Lelouch. Lamp Rouge, Lelouch, the Togabito growled. Lelouch stood behind his foe with a look of disgust on his face and dressed in his captain's garb. You fight for the throne of the Soul King as though for you it is some sort of birthright. You want to step into God's territory and reshape the world how you see fit. You're not the first man I know to want to overstep God and control the world. At least unlike him, like me, you want what is best for the future. Still, to change the natural selection of order so that only the strong survive is a paradox in and of itself. If you remove all of the weak, then the strong that remain will only be the strong and the incredibly strong. There will always be a gap in power. Nobles have power over their servants. Parents have power over their children. A world where only the strong can exist will never happen. The world doesn't work like that, Aizen. So what if the strong have varying levels of power? If they have even the slightest bit of power, then they will be inspired by those stronger than them to become even stronger. But those without power resent those of us with power. They are confused, hateful and distrustful. Are you telling me that you never once experienced a time when your power made others distrustful of you? Aizen's words struck a chord in Lelouch, and Lelouch was forced to recall the time in which all of the Black Knights betrayed him for Schneeisel. It was true that at that point that he had crossed a line of despair over Nunnally's supposed death, but if he hadn't, the situation would have been the same and Lelouch would have been alone regardless. And it was all because of his geese. Aizen smirked smugly. By the look on your face, I know I'm right. You and I are more alike than you'd like to admit. He glared again. So why do you insist on supporting the weak and protecting them? With your power you could control the entire Soul Society. Lelouch said nothing in response. He simply gave Aizen a half-lidded gaze and then turned around, lowering his head a bit. Dispose of him. Huh. Rita had thought she was going to watch Lelouch and Aizen go at it a bit more. What did you just say? Aizen snarled. You damn little brat. Aizen charged at Lelouch. Bakudo 4, Hanawa. Rita restrained Aizen. Hado 11, Tsiuzuri Raiden. Aizen was shocked into submission and he dropped to his knees. Aizen laughed as he stared at the ground, then he cocked his head towards the sky and laughed even louder. So this is how it ends. He glared at Lelouch. You would turn your eyes away from the truth? Acknowledge my words, Lelouch. Lelouch stood stolidly with his back to Aizen as the wind blew past them. He said nothing. Admit that you've been wrong all this time. Aizen exclaimed with a frenzied smile. You know that I am right. I saw that look in your eye. Admit your mistake. Lelouch began to turn around and looked in Aizen's direction. That's it, Lelouch. You know what is right. Use your power on Rita and Yamamoto. Take the Soul Society for yourself. Don't do it, Lelouch, Rita warned. He can't use it on me again, relax. No, but he could turn me against you, that's just as bad. Rita waited to see what Lelouch could do. If he started giving a command, she'd down him. Naive as she was, Rita wanted to believe that Lelouch wasn't listening to Aizen. Lelouch opened his mouth to speak, giving Aizen hope. What are you waiting for? Confused, Aizen followed Lelouch's gaze. His amethyst eyes were looking over Aizen straight at Rita. What? Aizen was confused as to what Lelouch was saying. Dispose of him already. Wasn't that the purpose of this battle? Why yes, of course. Rita wrapped her Kido around her staff and used it to keep Aizen on a leash as she prepared her Kido. Lelouch turned back around. That's better. Wait. Where are you going? Acknowledge my statements. Admit that I am right or denounce me to be wrong. Do it. You are my rival, are you not? Lelich continued to walk. Even if I am, I have nothing more to say to you. Aizen's face went blank with shock as Lelich continued to walk away from him. Goodbye Aizen, Lelich began to disappear onto the horizon. Get back here. Aizen shouted at him. You will not deny me. You cannot deny me. By the power invested in me. Lelich. I lay claim to your soul. Aizen was dragged back into hell screaming at the top of his lungs in frustration, begging for his rival's admittance of his power, his ideals, something, but he was denied everything. Lelich had washed his hands of Aizen and soon the warmth of hell and the smell of brimstone and the cold binding feeling of chains around his body welcomed Aizen back to hell. Lelich passed by Kyokaku in his path as he marched with his hands in his pockets. It's done, he said to her, let's begin restoring the Soul Society. Sir, did something happen? Kyokaku asked Lelich. It's nothing, just do as you're told, Lelich said to Kyokaku and continued to walk. Yes sir, Kyokaku said even though she knew better. Sunset. With the Soul Society slowly recovering, and Rita pitching in to do so with the Soul King's permission, everyone was doing what they could to get the Seirei back in order. However, Lelich, the brains behind the whole ordeal, was nowhere to be found. As word spread, a search party went out to look for him. Susanna eventually found him in the first place she looked. Lelich was standing on top of Sokioku Hill by the broken Sokioku stand. Lelich Dano. She walked towards him. Lelich was dressed in his captain garb, but he was wearing a tattered black cloak over it, staring out at the sunset. Lelich Dano, is everything all right? Susanna asked him as she neared. Lelich didn't say anything and just continued to stare out upon the sunset. Susanna, not wanting to be a bother, simply stood by Lelich's side and looked out over the horizon with him. She waited until he was ready to speak, if he wanted to. It was a little while longer before Lelich finally made a sound. Susanna, tell me, is my power to be feared? Should people resent me for my strength and my abilities, my intelligence included? What are you saying? Of course not you. Lelich cut her off. Please don't try to make me feel better. I need an honest answer. Even if I was, your question is just silly and that's the honest truth. Your strength and skill aren't to be feared, it's to be revered. We all followed you in the Phantoms and even now because we trust you, Lelich Dano. Me, Teiko, Nimue-san, everyone. We all have come to see you as a friend. You are our guiding light. And besides, if no one else will stand by you, I always will. Lelich looked at Susanna as she stood in the sunlight with her hands behind her back, right arm straight, left hand clutching her right wrist, silver hair blowing through the wind. Susanna. Susanna smiled the kindest smile she could at Lelich. You've always been my hero, Lelich Dano. I've always revered you for who you are and everything that comes with it, even that strange power that you have that can manipulate someone into doing anything you want. Don't you ever question though that you might be under its influence, didn't Kyokaku and Jin explain that its power is absolute? I could have used my geese to make you feel towards me as you do. You don't question it at all. Of course not, Susanna shook her head. Lelich was completely confused. I trust you, Lelich Dano. I know you would never do anything like that. It's my faith in you that lets me believe in you. You have a good heart. Justice and righteousness are where you are and that's why I will never judge you, never stop believing in you. It's also why I love you. For a second it looked like Lelich might cry, but he simply reached out and pulled Susanna towards him, holding her close, causing her to blush. Susanna wrapped her arms around Lelich. Whatever made you feel like this, you shouldn't let it get to you, but if it is, it's okay to tell us when you're suffering. You do so much for us, Lelich Dano. You can't be afraid to approach us with your problems too. You don't have to stand by yourself when you don't want to. I am not alone. You're right, Susanna, thank you. Lelich said to her. I am not alone. He let go of her, but still held onto her hand by the tips of her fingers. Come on, let's go and have ourselves a good time at Kyokaku's party. Will you dance with me? I am not alone. Of course, but don't be upset if others want to dance with me too, Lelich told her. Susanna laughed. Yes, I know. Being popular is tough, huh? Yeah, Lelich said, and he and Susanna walked together as the sun continued to set behind them. I am not alone. End of chapter 132. Chapter 133, Anohana Retsu, Godiai Suteiko. Third-person POV. 1st Division Barracks. Hours after Aizen's defeat before sunset, Anohana stood in the presence of both Rita and Yamamoto Genri Yusai. They were alone in Yamamoto's office, or rather where it was supposed to be after it was burned to ashes by him and later destroyed by Aizen. Things would be rebuilt though. With the Comings of the Research and Development Department, rebuilding was now quite simple with high-tech collapsible fortresses and repair drones of the highest quality, plans of which had been drafted by Lelich himself. Of course, without Mayuri to lead the department, a new figurehead would have to step in. Yes, change was to come through all the Soul Society, and it started with Yamamoto's replacement. So you mean this isn't some sort of revival? You're leaving us? Anohana asked. Lelich's geese is what allowed me to come to your aid. With my task complete, it would be against the natural order for me to stay. I must return to the Warden's storage in order to be reincarnated. But who will lead us if not you? You are more than capable of taking up the mantle, Anohana Retsu. You have proven such. And no, if anyone should lead, it should be Lelich. With his mind. Lamperouge Lelich might have the responsibility to lead the Godiai, but he does not have the skill or the might nor the experience, all of which you have. You are the wisest, longest running, and most gifted Soul Reaper after me. The right is yours. Why else do you think I gave you his Haori? Rita asked. But, Anohana was nervous. She knew she had to take up the mantle one day, but this was too sudden. I understand your concern, but as you said, Lamperouge Lelich is a brilliant man. You should lead, but it is not a weakness to seek the intelligence of others. I did so when we faced Talbumasuk. The Godiai is led by 13 captains for a reason. You should lead, but let the others assist you as I did for all the time I was in charge. You are ready, Retsu, Rita told her. You've been ready. Rita. It is time for me to depart. Remember, mistakes will always be made. No leader is perfect. The important thing about the mistakes you make is always to be able to learn from them or correct them if possible. Never doubt yourself, always look ahead to the path beyond. Stand strong with your back straight and make sure it is known that you are the hope of the Godiai. I will do the best I can, Anohana bowed. Now all you need is a change of attire. Something more, leaderish, Rita quipped, tapping a finger to her cheek only to use shunpo, and suddenly she was holding a length of ribbon in her fingers. Anohana had rebraided her hair after the battle and Rita had just undone it. There, perfect. But. Your time as the medical captain is over, Retsu, Rita said, walking back towards Yamamoto. You must be ready to use the strength you were granted as a birthright. It is time you stopped fearing your power and put it to the use I set you towards. Aye. Anohana was incredibly nervous in taking this step. She had seen her power get away from her and had become complacent in her role as the 4th Division captain. She did not know if leadership suited her. If Lelich was no candidate, she'd sooner pass the mantle to Yukatake or Shunsui. Do not give me that look. I personally chose you amongst the original 13 captains from the start. Even if you were not brought to us by the Warden herself, your skill and talent are second to none of those around you. Do not hesitate. I never expected. Anohana couldn't find the right words. We understand how sudden this is. Neither of us expected it to happen like this. You envisioned a different way? Anohana asked. A question to be answered another time, Rita responded. She opened a hell gate. I'll be back later for the party that Shiba woman is throwing, I wouldn't miss it for the world. For now though, she turned towards Anohana whilst Yamamoto stepped towards the gate. Think about the position you're in now and the decisions you intend to make. Just remember that no matter what decisions you make, that I support you. Anohana dropped to one knee. I will do what I can. She looked over to Yamamoto. I will make both of you proud of me to give me this role. I will not squander this opportunity or fail to uphold the responsibility I am given. That's a good girl. It is exactly how you have been trained. I bid you farewell. And with that the elderly Soul Reaper entered into the gate. It would be the last time anyone would ever hear or see the man known as Yamamoto Shigekuni Genri Yusai. Rita entered in after Yamamoto and looked over her shoulder and left with a quick, "I'll see you later." That night, Shiba Manor. Lelich and Susanna walked into the front door only for Kyokaku to put her arm around Lelich's neck, yanking him to the side and rubbing her knuckles into his head. Hey, Captain, you finally made it. You had us all worried that you went and ditched us. Anyone else in Lelich would instantly grow cross, but he and Kyokaku had this sort of buddy-buddy relationship outside the barracks, though not quite this informal. "Kyokaku, how many drinks have you had?" Lelich said, trying to yank her arm away from his neck. Come on Teiko, I'm a big girl. I can handle myself. Drinking's a hobby. Party must have started early this time. Usually she's more composed than this." "Really? This seems kind of normal for her. I think I'll head out to the garden, like always." "Please excuse me," Susanna trotted away. She was always antisocial at these gatherings. She liked to be alone, away from the pointing fingers and drunkards making quips at her appearance. Even after a century and a quarter she was still rather insecure about the way she looked. Kyokaku let Lelich go, so hey. I heard the Tremere girl, what's her face, Sheena? Slemma? Senna? Yeah, her. Kyokaku hiccuped, heard she's going into the Shino Academy this year or is going to get special training through the rebuild of her house. Well, with all the destruction to the noble district, surely the Tremeres can have a chance to rebuild and stay normal this time. Got that right, Kyokaku agreed. Hey. Kyokaku. Over here. Yevon's trying to beat your record. Do I want to ask? Nah, Kyokaku hiccuped again, go have fun. I'll see you tomorrow. Hey. Come over here. Shut up. I'm on my way. Don't be so impatient. You remind me of Ganju. So? Where to? Not sure, perhaps I'll go see if Yuna's about. Mari's return must have shaken her up somewhat. Always planning for the future, I see. While it's never good to mix business with pleasure, this isn't business. Proverbs getting away from you again? Zip it. Lelich headed about the crowd to look for Yuna only to be approached by someone else entirely. Oh, just the man I was looking for. Lelich turned in the direction of the voice to see Anohana approaching him, garbed professionally and with her hair down. Oh, Anohana Suteiko, Lelich said and bowed low, you honor me with your presence. Anohana smiled pleasantly, you're acting as if I'm a queen or something. There's no need for such a formal bow off duty. No, you deserve all the respect you are given, I insist, Lelich said charmingly. Anohana chuckled a bit. Lelich stood up straight. You said you were looking for me? Hi, Anohana said in an upbeat tone, as you probably may have guessed, my status as the next Suteiko is to be made official. Before the next regularly scheduled captain's meeting I am to have a meeting with the Soul King himself and to have a replacement for the death of Kurotsuke Mayuri. My position can wait, but the Godai will not be able to move forward without an established head captain or a leader of the Department of Research and Development. Oh, Kurotsuke finally bit the big one, did he? Lelich said, smirking, and crossing his thumb and index finger under his chin. You sound like you're happy about it. Maybe I am, Lelich said, I trust he will be written off as killed in action. Lelich winked twice, signifying that he knew the truth of the matter. It was a difficult thing to watch, but someone needed to act as a decoy. Well, if we had to lose anyone, at least we removed some corruption, Lelich said and waved a servant over to pour some champagne. A toast. To Kurotsuke Mayuri, whose sacrifice will make the Godai shine brighter than ever before. May his time in hell be spent being boiled alive and stabbed repeatedly with pointy objects, Anohana raised her glass. Cheers, Lelich and Anohana tapped their glasses. At such a gathering one could easily mistake them for drunk or their voices would be lost in the crowd. Both captains had a personal vendetta to settle with Kurotsuke, though Anohana's was much less severe. As medical captain her authority often clashed with Mayuri's when it came to certain treatments and some of his patients were often lost in the name of science. Something Anohana was not happy with in the least. The opportunity Lelich presented to her to off the bastard was something she took glee in exploiting, and Lelich knew she would. So, big shoes to fill? Lelich asked, making conversation. Don't remind me, Anohana said, feeling a little apprehensive. I didn't think I'd be taking up this mantle for at least another century. You'll do fine. At least unlike Yamamoto-sama, you don't have to shout to get your point across. Speaking of which, let us have another toast. Lelich agreed, understanding the meaning behind this one. More champagne was poured and the two held up their glasses. To Yamamoto Shigekuni Genri Yusai, a man whose greatness shined like his bald forehead in moonlight. He led us for many centuries, was a true leader and was feared by all his enemies and revered by all his allies. There will never be another like him. May his soul rest in peace and may he find a wonderful new life and reincarnation. Let it be known that he was a valiant man. He never showed any fear and never compromised with an enemy. Cheers. Drinking already? That eager to drown ourselves in our sorrows are we. Lelich and Anohana looked up to see Rita hanging upside down, having appeared practically out of nowhere. Boo. The squirrely Soul Reaper teleported and stood on the ground. Are you sure it's okay for you to be here? Lelich asked. I follow my own schedule. Those souls aren't going anywhere, kid. I'm more than a century old, you know. Yeah, but compared to me you're just a kid, Rita returned. Lelich sighed. Lelich, I would like this opportunity to catch up with Rita. If you wouldn't mind. Lelich held up a hand, say no more. He walked away. Thank you for coming. It means a lot to me that you're here. That's the whole reason I came, Rita said, affectionately stroking Anohana's face. She stared deep into the captain's eyes. What is it? You've become so mature since I last saw you, Retsu. I've missed you. I know. Being the warden of hell isn't easy, though being the head captain is no picnic either. It certainly won't be. There was a brief pause. I can contact you whenever I want now that I'm in charge, yes? I was under the impression the head captain could contact you directly. That's certainly the truth, though it takes a while. Every time I'm off the job, more souls pile up on my apparatus and that's just more work between my return and my next break, Rita explained. Why yes I know, Anohana said timidly. Relax, Rita placed a hand on the far inside of Anohana's shoulder, you know I would come out here to see you in a heartbeat no matter how small the necessity. Yes, you've cared for me for so long from afar. Why? Well, Rita turned around, when I first met you, I saw the potential you had. I saw the good you could do. You could tell that from watching me butcher civilians. Anohana asked, confused. Truthfully, Rita looked over her shoulder, I actually thought you'd wind up a lot like the current Kenpei. She turned around and shrugged, but hey, a fighter's a fighter. There are a lot of rumors flying around about you, you know. Such as. I looked at some of the archives after you left. The Soul King seems worried that you would eventually rebel against the Soul Society, that you intend to use your power to fight. It's rubbish, Rita folded her arms across her chest, being the warden is an opportunity. How many people can say that they judge souls as well as cleanse them? That's true, but you were sent there as punishment. Didn't you know that? Rita turned around again. They were afraid of me. I wasn't always like this, Retsu. Rita put up her hand by her chest. Do you know why it is advised never to use bankais unless absolutely necessary or why swords are given releases? Anohana shook her head. She had taken the concept of Zanpakuto for granted. In the early age of Zanpakuto there were no sword releases. Zanpakuto were always active, the spirit manifested as a part of us and the power had to be drawn from within. Bankai was achieved after many years of training, though many died attempting to reach it. I was not the first to reach Bankai. That honor belongs to the man you just replaced. Yamamoto-sama was the first to ever reach Bankai. Are you really that surprised? Rita asked in a manner that indicated she was impatient to continue her story. Anyway, though I was not the first to learn, I was the first not to use it sparingly. Most Soul Reapers had learned to balance the use of the Spirit's full presence in a portion of their power, the former of which would become known as Bankai and the latter Shikai. When I learned it though, I used my power on whatever enemy stood in my path. I left naught but destruction in my wake, most of the time completely unnecessary. I believed in taking care of the threat before it began to become one, but the others did not think so. Ah, you mean the famous battle in which you clashed with Yamamoto-sama and the clan leaders? Rita nodded and continued, turning around to face her surrogate daughter. As you know, because I used my full power straight away, while they all believed they could whittle me down using only a portion of their power, they never stood a chance, but, more than that, we all had yet to learn about controlling our full power and mine got out of control. Yes, I read about that. The archives called it the Great Cataclysm. Many innocents were killed. My full power, or my Bankai as it is now known, when not under control, is a dangerous weapon. It's been many years and I've had it under my thumb for quite a while now, but under my control I am believed to be all the more dangerous. Yes, the sentient sorcerer is the far greater threat than the gigantic beast. Rita nodded in agreement to the proverb. The Soul King believes I am bitter, resentful for what I was put through, but such is not the case. I'm going to be honest with you, Retsu, things get a little tiring acting cheerful and happy all the time. That was another reason I turned you and helped you. It's often been speculated why you didn't just coddle me and make me your apprentice. Rita curled her tail around her. Anohana looked at her eyes. They were eyes of shame. I did not want to take the risk that the Kusanada might attack you if you left my sight. Also, you were not in the right mentality to teach, Rita said, now looking serious and letting her tail go. You could be taught, but not by me. I was merely the observer, the guider to a greater path. Rita, is something the matter? Rita wrapped her tail around her again. There is another reason why I turned you, but I cannot say why, not now, but I will say that I failed someone who really needed my help when it mattered most to her. Rita found the nearest chair and sat down. She put her left arm on the table and looked to her right. She hates me and still has not forgiven me for what I did to her. Rita blinked slowly and then stood up. It feels good to talk about things and come clean once in a while. She smiled at Anohana and returned to being upbeat. I don't have to put on a show when I'm around you. I'm always here for you, just as you are here for me, Rita. I'm glad. I was right to choose you, Rita smiled and her surrogate daughter smiled back. Rita then ruffled her tail. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to be heading back. You're leaving already? Anohana asked. I'll be back tomorrow to collect Mari. She wanted to give Yuna a proper goodbye and have one last day with her. She has the reserves to do so. I don't see the harm. Anohana smiled serenely, good old Akari. It saddens me that this will be the last we ever see of her. Oh, who knows? Maybe when she's reincarnated you'll meet her again one day. She is going to Varsina after all. Anohana sighed. That was another reason why she didn't want to become head captain so soon. Varsina was a world of the living that could see spirits whose world of peace was slowly falling apart, and soon it could upset the balance if full-scale war broke out on the planet. Anohana would have to force the Soul Society's involvement. It was at least 30 years away, perhaps more, before she had to worry about it, but it would come nevertheless. I bid you farewell, Retsu, Rita said, heading towards the exit. Wait, Anohana jogged towards her and hugged her from behind. Rita turned around and returned her affection. I'm always around when you need me, remember that? Yes, I know. Rita then left the manor and after a few more minutes her presence vanished and she was gone. The next day, Ichigo and his friends left earlier that day with Soifone, Urahara, Yoriyuki, and the remaining Vizards in tow. After they were gone, a few hours later, it was time for Mari's departure. It would have been sooner, but Rita was running behind her own schedule. Everyone was complacent with Mari heading out and leaving, except Yuna. Before Mari had any chance to turn around and leave, Yuna leapt at her, clutched at her waist and began crying. No. Mari-sama. I don't want you to go. There, Yuna, Mari stroked her head. It's going to be okay. You have 2 years though. Please stay, just for a little while longer, Yuna pleaded. Mari looked at Rita as if to ask for her opinion on the matter. Rita shrugged. 2 years is 2 years. I don't have much of a problem with it. You won't be able to do much fighting though. Of course if you get a Jigai your strength might restore itself a tad, but don't push yourself. Then I will stay, if only for a little while. Yuna hugged Mari with all her might. I'm so happy. I'll leave you lovebirds alone then, Rita chuckled. She looked at everyone as she began to head into the gate she had opened. I'd best be heading out then. She looked at Anohana. In a few days a messenger from the Royal Dimension will escort you to see the Soul King, make your promotion official. You will be given the location of the Oken and be allowed to meet with the Soul King himself in person. Anohana bowed, I will be ready. Rita nodded to her and then prepared to head off. I bid you all adieu. And with that, the Warden of Hell vanished into the fire and brimstone of Hell. A few days later. Since she was no longer a Soul Reaper, despite Yuna's desperate pleas for her to stay, Mari decided to take up residence in the world of the living for her remaining time, promising that, since she was free to do what she wanted, that she would come to Yuna when time allowed it. Having been a captain for so many years, a busy one at that, up until her death, Mari hadn't had a chance to just live life in so many years. Kind-hearted soul that she was, Orium let the older woman stay with her for a while. Mari wore a Jigai to conserve energy. She wouldn't be doing any fighting unless absolutely necessary. She wanted to extend her time living for as long as possible. She figured she had 6 months at best. She hoped to at least make it to the new year. She set her bag down by Orium's couch and stared out the window in the apartment and let out a relaxed breath. The air is so fresh here in the world of the living. It's the summer. It's the nice time of the year, Orium responded. Well yes, I know that, but in the Soul Society the air is always so tense due to all the Rishi, but here it's so calm, so serene, save for a few dense pockets. It's peaceful. Orium agreed happily. Shall I fix us something to eat? I want to be a good guest while I'm staying here. That's alright. You don't have to do anything, Akari-san. You're my honored guest, Orium panicked. Mari chuckled, Inu-san, do relax, please. It's no trouble at all. Orium simply smiled. Anyway, shouldn't you be finishing getting ready? School starts in an hour. You're right. Orium exclaimed, looking at the clock on the microwave. Don't panic, I won't let you be late. Just think of me as a concerned roommate. I promise to pull my own weight around here. That's very kind of you, Akari-san. Mari only smiled. 3 days later. The Royal Dimension. Wearing the robes of the Suteiko, escorted by 2 members of the Royal Guard, Anohana was escorted to the far reaches of the dimension to meet with the Soul King. It would be her first time meeting the man that was considered the linchpin of the Soul Society. Her position as head captain would be made official and she would be told the location of the Oken by word of the ruler himself. Anohana was escorted to a gigantic pair of heavy metal doors with tall stone walls all around her. The Royal Dimension surely lived up to its name, with all of the medieval-looking structures making the entire place look like something right out of a fairy tale. There were hardly any people around, just the Royal Guard and some servants of the family. The dimension itself was rather small. It stood outside the time and space of the Soul Society, Hell, Hueco Mundo, and the living world, and was only about the size of a small town, since the entire dimension was just the castle and its surrounding courtyard. The 2 guardsmen opened the gigantic double doors and Anohana found herself standing in a circular garden-like area surrounding by tall, curved stone walls. In front of her there was a circular platform. The platform was circular in shape with 4 small spikes curving upwards and towards the center from the would-be corners of it. The platform was big enough for 5 people at the most. Anohana stepped onto the platform as the large gate was shut behind her and the sun hung over her head into the garden-like area. The area was so small that the being summoned from Lelich's Shokin Kinshi would only be able to fit the diameter of its leg inside the area. When the doors were fully shut, the platform vibrated for a few moments and then began to descend into the earth as chains pulled it down from below and the spikes remained on the surface, signifying that they were there to balance the top of the platform as it descended along 4 connected chains towards the base of the dimension where Anohana would meet the Soul King. The platform went deep underground, or what Anohana perceived was underground. There was no light save for what little light descended from the sun above ground. When the platform stopped descending, it shook like an elevator upon reaching a certain floor and then locked into place to await her return. Then, suddenly, rows upon rows of sharp-ended, blue crystals rose up from around Anohana, acting as walls to guide her path forward in a straight line until she reached a very plain-looking door with a plain-looking brass knob. She reached for the knob only for an azure essence of spirit energy wrapped around her hand, as if testing to see if she was permitted to enter. She stopped her approach and let the essence coil and slide about her hand until it faded. She then heard the latch turn and the door opened by itself, beckoning her inside. Anohana entered the room of nothing but blackness and the door closed behind her, locking behind her. There was no one inside, but Anohana was not so childish and inexperienced as to be bothered, scared or intimidated by such things. The same blue glow that had grasped her hand set a spot on the floor in front of her ablaze in a circle as the Soul King's seal appeared inside of it. A figure rose up from beneath the floor, bathed in the blue flames of the circle around it. The figure was tall, only a little less than 2 meters, but appeared to be just a dull gray cloak with a shadowy hood. However, unlike the cloaks Mari, Kazumi, and Rita wore in Hell, this cloak was so long that it trailed along the ground so that if its wearer took a step their feet would not be seen. It was incredibly cumbersome and bulky, and it reminded Anohana of Minajiki with how mysterious it made the person. Whatever she had expected the Soul King to look like, it certainly wasn't this. Captain of Squad 4, en route to become Captain Commander of the Godi I-13, Anohana Retsu. Long-running Soul Reaper and surrogate daughter of Jinin Garita. Shikai is Minajiki and Bankai is Minajiki Zenmitsu. Greetings to you. I am one of the many avatars of the Soul King. The figure before Anohana spoke with a booming voice that resonated all around her. The figure in front of her had no features behind the shadow cast by his hood. Avatar? You are not he himself? Anohana asked. Nay, we are all he, but we all take different forms. My true form is something not meant for mortal eyes. I speak through my avatars for reasons of secrecy. I select my appearance based on my visitor in order to make sure I am heard. Only 3 mortals have ever seen my true form, 2 of which went mad. Anohana decided not to prod upon the statement and just decided to keep on business. I am here to gain your approval of becoming the Captain Commander of the Godi I-13. Yes, I know. I know everything. Just because I am not seen does not mean I do not see. I am more omniscient than that squirrel you've come to see as a mother. All information comes to me through others and I may view it and retain it at my discretion. Are you a god of some sort then? God is such an arbitrary term. I prefer to think of myself as a being ascended above that of you much simpler life forms. Do you have a name other than the Soul King? I have many names: Soul King, Magistrate, Linchpin of the Afterlife and Thaddeus Gigantus Hugo III, and C, just to name a few. All of which are true, but yet none of them are either. I exist because you do and I am bound by your existence. A thought reverberated in Anohana's head. I met God, or rather the collective unconsciousness of humanity. Lelich's tale now made a little more sense. Of course, she had to be certain of one thing. Have you ever been called the collective unconsciousness of humanity? Very recently too, actually. There is a man on earth, the Emperor of Britannia, who seeks to overpower me. The blighted fool couldn't do so if he tried. Why do you ask? If I say something, it could throw off the balance of time. It's best I remain silent. He will understand once the time paradox comes to light. No reason. One of our captains referred to you as such. Ah yes, Lamperouge Lelich. An interesting case that one. Anohana blinked. You know of Lelich's circumstances. Nothing gets by me, Anohana Retsu. I observe and watch the flow of time like a book. Lelich showed up in the Soul Society with no history for me to observe because it is a history that has not happened yet. So you've been watching him then? I watch all individuals who make things interesting. You, Zaraki Kenpeke, Lamperouge Lelich, Aizen Sosuke, Urahara Kisuk, Kurosaki Ichigo, Jinin Garita, and even the Bounce before they were all decidedly eradicated. Is that all you do? Watch. Were you in my position you would understand. My avatars do not accurately reflect my true personality and appearance. Sometimes observation is the best option. My power is vast and wide, but taking action has never been in my best interest. Yes, you do seem to relay most of what you desire through the Central 46. Yes, speaking of them, I will be sending you back with the 46 men that will be taking up its new chambers. Anohana, never one to be afraid to challenge authority, spoke her mind. I do not believe we need a new Central 46. Do not begin to dictate to me how things should be. I am not dictating, Anohana replied casually, I am merely offering up my belief. In my history with the previous two iterations of the Central 46, whenever I was involved they never spoke out against me, mostly out of fear. Now that I am before you, I must ask, was that fear the fear of what I would do to them, despite that it meant angering you, or fear that Rita would return? Your silence is very reassuring, Anohana said sarcastically. Rita's return is something of note, but your power has worked on those that do not even know of the workings of hell. Rest assured you have your own strength to rely on. That much you have been able to prove to others. It is interesting that you would know of that. Rita is like a mother to me, you said so enough yourself. Though we do not converse often, she dotes on me and we are close. I would not be standing before you if she did not turn me away from what I once was. But as she has said, the transformation was mostly your own doing, and I do agree that you have become a better person because of it. Alas, we are getting off topic. I agree with what you say and that any decision made by the Central 46 will be overturned by you if you disagree, plus there is the logic to consider of your 10th Division captain. Lelich is one of our strongest assets in that department. Yes. I remember receiving a convincing letter from Hakaifun from his desk not too long ago. He is a remarkable thinker. But while command has been left up to the captain commander before, what will you do about the trial system he has set up for their use? Surely you cannot hold a trial for everything. This too is something part of why I hesitate. My division can oversee that all well on its own. We are impartial and well-mannered enough that we can see, or at least I would hope given they were under Yamamoto Genri Usai's leadership for so long, the truth of any matter. Then so be it. It shall be as you desire. What will you do with the chambers beneath the courtroom itself? I'm sure there is some use we can find for it, perhaps a new archive room or residential area for criminals awaiting trial or division members awaiting to step into the courtroom. Rebuilding will certainly have to be done, but we can do it. Yes. I foresee a bright future for the Godei with you at the helm, Anohana Retsu. You will do a fine job. I thank you for the compliment. However, there is one other thing I wish to discuss before I leave, Anohana stated. Yes? I would like it that Rita be given more freedom. What happened with Aizen must not happen again. She is overworked and requires help. The Kusanada are not enough. Those you were going to use as the replacement Central 46 can be used to help her with her menial task work. Rita is impartial enough to make proper judgments on individuals. I cannot send aid to her on that front. Then at least aid her in surveillance. She is overworked enough as it is with the judgment of souls. She can't be held responsible for everything, or more things like Aizen will happen, Anohana defended. There was a pause before the Soul King spoke again. There is merit in the things you say, but giving her such a team would be feeding into her ambition. I do not desire her to surface. I will say this once, Rita is not who you think she is. She is a good person, wears her heart out on her sleeve. If she wanted to do anything of what you accuse her of, she would have done it already and helped Aizen lead the charge. She also would not have turned me from my fate and catered me instead, Anohana responded. However, if you do not wish her return, my ultimatum is this: do as I say and I don't go crying to mommy about how poorly you treated me. Believe me, she wouldn't like that. There was a long pause. Lelich and anyone with a sensible head would have been in awe that Anohana was attempting to coerce the Soul King into doing anything. After all, if the spirit cared to, he could destroy Anohana with a mere thought. However, even he understood the gravity of her ultimatum. Rita going on the Blitz would spell doom for many. By the time word would reach the royal dimension, there'd be more carnage and dead bodies in mere hours than what Aizen and his former companions caused in a single attack together. The Soul King was not afraid of Rita. He was far more powerful than her and all of her Kusanada combined, but he had to act as a benevolent governor and do the things that yielded the least wanton destruction to keep the world relatively peaceful. Anohana waited patiently for her answer. She wanted to help Rita in any way she could since the first-generation Soul Reaper had done so much for Anohana already. She didn't think she was being unreasonable, and having Rita in her pocket was a useful tool when smiling, and Bankai would not cut it. The Soul King was probably the only single being in existence capable of taking Rita down at 100% and trying her hardest. The Soul King finally responded with, "If you think you can make me fear her, you are mistaken. Still, that is a bit of chaos I would not welcome. To give that squirrel any reason to be enraged is doomed to many. And stop calling her that too. I hate it. Rita is a Soul Reaper just like the rest of us. At least acknowledge one of your eldest soldiers," Anohana glared defiantly. The term squirrel was very racial to Anohana, and it discredited the fact that Rita was, in fact, a Soul Reaper. She was one of the longest running. In fact, with Yamamoto now dead, Rita was currently the oldest living Soul Reaper, or so it was known. A long time ago there was a Soul Reaper by the name of Feluca Telra Sharaman. Supposedly she was the first ever Soul Reaper, but one day vanished without a trace. She was mentioned in the archives, but no known image of her was available, or if there was, it was too faded or too old to get a good portrait. The Soul King's voice pulled Anohana from her thoughts. "You change when you speak of her," he said, referring back to Rita. "I change when kindness will not cut it. I am normally soft-spoken as I was when we first started speaking. If the Soul King's avatar could smile, it probably would be. I can see why Rita chose to curb you. You remind her of herself. That in itself is truly terrifying. Still, unlike her, you understand how to control your power and understand that the world must work the way it does. You had the power to attempt to usurp Yamamoto long ago, yet you chose to stay much like Sasaki Kojiro. For that, I know I can trust you." "That is truly flattering," Anohana responded. "I will not send as many as you request. I will send several of the men I was going to use to your surrogate parent. She will use them as you have suggested, or she will not have them at all. Rita will understand and most likely be grateful for the company. Personally, I think it will be fitting given how rotten the last few batches were." "Are you implying something about my decisions?" "Perhaps," Anohana answered cryptically. There was another awkward pause. "Whatever, be gone from my sight. I recognize you as the new Suteiko of the Godei 13. Go and address your allies. I will as soon as you tell me the location of the Oken." Anohana nodded and exited the lair of the Soul King. "Ah yes, that. Listen to me very carefully, as I will not repeat myself. What I am about to tell you must never be spoken to anyone except your chosen successor, and only when you are ready to move up in the world." "I understand." "Good." Captain's Meeting Hall. 1 week later. The captains were all at assembly, save for a spot for the 4th and 12th Division. Anohana stood at the front of the hall, standing where Yamamoto once stood. Things were different from the perspective she was standing in as she looked to her old spot, currently empty, in between Stefan and Byakuya. She smiled a little. She felt important in the spot she was standing in. In fact, she also felt a little bit at peace with herself. She had already addressed her fellow captains, all of whom had bowed to her down on one knee, even Kenpei, out of respect, when she had declared that she was taking the mantle. Currently they were all standing waiting for the arrival of Anohana's new chosen vice-captain and her choice for the captain of Squad 12 to replace Kuratsuki. "What do you suppose is taking them so long?" Lelich asked, deciding to make conversation. "It was definitely short notice," Anohana answered. "I can understand if at least my new second-in-command was more than a little flustered at being chosen. It was difficult selecting a candidate from the recommendations that were put forward to me, but I believe my choice was the right one." "Of course it is. You're the head captain," Hisuna supported. She had gone and put Rukia's name forward and had decided that, even if Rukia wasn't selected, that she'd take Rukia under her wing to replace Izuru. She'd told Rukia as much, and while her sister was surprised that Hisuna had put her name forward, she was happy that her big sister was thinking of her. Yukatake had put forward both Kian and Vera, finding them both very capable. Hisuna had beaten him to the punch on Rukia, otherwise he would have recommended her too. Lelich had put forward Kyukaku and Shisato's name, believing that both women had the capabilities to be a vice-captain. Stefan had also put Yolanda's name forward and, of all people, Naomi's. After the battle, and her recovery, though Naomi still acted like her ditzy, cheery self, Stefan knew better. He had read Rebatuka's report and she never bullshitted anything. In her report Rebatuka had said, "This is far too unreal for me to be making this crap up." Eventually a hell butterfly flew into the room and landed on Anohana's finger. She listened to the message and then let it go. She then commanded in a calm, yet loud voice, "Open the doors." The large hall doors to the captain's office opened, revealing two individuals, one wearing a captain's haori and the other a lieutenant's armband. Lelich was intrigued by both choices. To replace Captain Kuratsuki, Anohana had selected Ichimaru Jin. Lelich agreed with this decision. Jin was a very intelligent individual. He might be a bit of a sociopath, but he could definitely get the job done. Between Jin and Mayuri, Lelich would rather deal with Jin's crap. Besides, if Jin did anything to Nimue, Lelich could just tax Rangika with work. It would be a subtle way of sending a message to Jin, and the man was smart enough to understand subtlety. Lelich was much more surprised by Anohana's choice of vice captain. He'd heard the candidates and ultimately decided, for himself, that she would pick Naomi, who had proven herself in the battle, or Kyokaka, who was constantly proving her worth as a soul reaper. He understood that while it was a high honor, word had spread about Rukia becoming her sister's second even if Anohana didn't choose her, and, really, it was a hefty responsibility to plop onto the girl's shoulders and, politically, it would make Kayan look inferior. She chose Vera. Amongst the candidates, so he had heard, Vera was the only one without a senior officer position. It mystified Lelich why she would be chosen, not that he doubted her capabilities or her responsibility. She was a good choice, but was she the right choice? Only time would tell. Vera walked over to Anohana's side and crouched down as Sasaki always did by Yamamoto. Jin walked to where Lelich was standing and stood next to him, grinning. "Well, lucky me. I get to stand next to my favorite captain in Dagodi I-13. Lelich didn't know if Jin was being serious or if he was joking. Jin was hard to read. Giving Jin a captain's position seemed like a good idea to Lelich. He'd been under Tissan's lock and key for over a year now and he hadn't done anything suspicious, not to mention with Anohana in charge people would be even less likely to turn against the Soul Society. Lelich was already forming the opinion that Anohana would be a far more effective head captain than Yamamoto. Lelich thought the meeting would just continue, but Anohana glanced down at Vera. "Vera-chan, aren't you going to introduce yourself to the people who don't know you well enough?" Vera trembled on the ground. Lelich could see it. Didn't Anohana know that speaking and Vera did not mix? "Senpai, that's really not necessary. Vera fought alongside us during the battle, alongside you. You don't have to force her to. She should not be afraid to take pride in her position. Please do as I asked, Vera-chan." Vera's desire to remain silent, and her nervousness, was overwritten by Anohana's cheerful smile that sent out scary vibes. Vera stood up, still shaking, and stood in front of her captain and bowed to the other captains. "I am Uyuka take Vera. I am Anohana Suteikos and Nu Fukotaiko." Vera was sweating all over with nerves. It was easy to see how reluctant she was to speak in front of an audience. Her childlike voice, squeaking like a mouse due to her stage fright, set a large contrast to the gothic appearance she exhibited. "IIW will do my best as the Ichiban Tai Fukotaiko." Lelich was about to say something to ease Vera's nerves, but Shunsui beat him to it. "Well, we're sure you'll suit the position just fine, Vera-chan. Your captain wouldn't have recommended you and Senpai wouldn't have picked you otherwise." "Congratulations, Vera," Hisuna praised her. "May justice always be with you," Tissan told her. "I know you'll be fine," Lelich told Vera, "you have what it takes." "Arigato gozaimasu." Vera bowed even lower and then quickly slunk back to her captain's side, whimpering and bowing low to the floor. Hisuna smiled. It was adorable to her. "How cute, stage fright," Hisuna giggled to herself. "Well then, shall we move on to the matters that need discussing?" Byakuya asked. Hi, Anohana agreed. After the meeting was let out, Anohana took Vera with her to her office. It had taken some doing, but the First Division and everything else in the Soul Society was back in order. Technology was amazing these days with rebuilding destroyed structures. Anohana took a look at the nameplate on her desk. She still found like she was walking through a dream. Head Captain Anohana Retsu. She wasn't sure if she fancied the title, but she knew that she would be able to do it. It would take some adjusting so that she wasn't looking over her shoulder and thinking Yamamoto was behind her when someone called out Suteiko, but she knew she'd be able to handle the responsibility. Why me? The two-word question came from Vera as Anohana looked towards the crimson-dyed brunette standing in the center of her office. I thought you were the best for the job. Is that not good enough? You accepted to be my vice captain. Vera looked down and Anohana realized that her reputation might have made it seem like she compelled Vera to say yes and that refusal was unacceptable. The new head captain went over and put a hand on Vera's shoulder. If you're uncomfortable then we can be uncomfortable together. It'll take time for me to adjust to my position as well. I have total faith in you Vera-chan. I know you'll be able to be the best Fukutaiko I could ask for. Vera smiled and then wormed her way into her captain's embrace, clutching at the lapels of her haori. Anohana smiled and held Vera to her. It would be a new experience for the both of them and there was a little bit of her that Anohana saw in Vera. She'd read up on the girl's history and it was one of the reasons she picked the girl. Bloody and violent paths led both women to where they were. Anohana knew that she had finally found a person she could rely on and understand, even more so than Isane, and Vera felt like she had found where she truly belonged as Anohana held her in a motherly embrace. Don't let me hurt you, Vera said suddenly. Anohana held her out at an arm's length. What do you mean? My Zanpakuto is possessive. She might think you're taking me from her. Anohana pat Vera on the head and laughed a little before smiling. I'd like to see her act. The vibes she was directing went straight through Vera, straight at Chikami Sorai. Eep. Vera smiled pleasantly at her captain. We'll be a good team. Yes we will. Vera gave Anohana a quick hug and then skipped out of her office to her own. Anohana smiled as she watched the girl go. Upon nightfall, Anohana left her division for the central 46 sold chambers. She went down to where they normally slumbered and stood in the center where a small contained portal was transfixed. It swirled about with a greenish outline and many reds, yellows, and oranges on the inside. Anohana stepped up so that she was only a few paces from the portal and picked up a small wooden staff lying next to her and tapped it to the ground 3 times in front of her and then waited. After a short time of waiting, Rita emerged from the portal, sitting on her Zanpakuto, as was typical of her. Hey Retsu, she smiled. How are you adjusting to your new assistants? Oh, it's been fun. They still need to learn who's in charge and why, but I'd say they're slowly understanding what is and isn't acceptable under my guidance. What about you? Today was the big day, wasn't it? Yes, Anohana nodded. Vera is my new vice captain. Little Vera-chan, eh? Yeah, that sounds about right. Anohana's brow furrowed. Do you know Vera? Anohana asked. Maabe, Rita smirked. Fine, don't tell me. I'll find out eventually, Anohana smiled and then sighed with relief. It's good that I can see you whenever I want now. Rita nodded. Yeah, this was a good idea. Nice little portal in my abode that only you and I can access with our Ryotsu. I'm glad you're going to be around more often. I will need your guidance. No you don't, Rita said bluntly. Anohana blinked. You've done fine for so many years without me, what do you need my guidance for? Just do what you've always done. Just ask me to come up and visit you for lunch or something. I do enough work downstairs. Anohana laughed. Rita was always like this. Still, it is good to know that I'll be able to see you more often. Yes, me too, Rita smiled. She stepped forward and she gave Anohana a big hug and her surrogate daughter returned the affection. Take care of yourself, okay? I'm always watching and you've continued to make me proud. Keep it up, Retsu. I will, Rita. Thank you for always watching over me. Thank you for being like a mother to me. You're welcome, Rita said and let go of Anohana and sniffed as she wiped a tear away from her eye. To think when I first found you that you were just a little girl. Now you look older than I do and you've come so far and do so much. You make me so proud, Retsu. The only way I could adore you more is if you came out of my womb. Anohana hugged Rita again and Rita hugged her back. Though we are not related by blood, you will always be like a daughter to me, Retsu. Yes, mother. Rita squeezed Anohana a little tighter and then went for the portal. Goodbye. See you soon. Yes, see you soon. Anohana said and watched Rita disappear. She began to head back for her quarters to turn in for the night, but before she got into bed she took a moment to look at the window up at the moon and admire the serenity of the scene. Elsewhere in the Soul Society, Lelich was doing the same, admiring the calmness of the sky as if its clarity and serenity reflected the state of the Soul Society. In the world of the living, Ichigo was lying in bed looking out his window too, thinking the same thing. All threats to his life had been neutralized. There'd be hollow attacks every once in a while, but, for the most part, he could finally get back to his life and just live it. He thought about what he would do when he finally graduated. Karakura Town didn't have much to choose from in terms of a good college. Could he really leave his hometown in pursuit of a career? And what about Orium and his family? He had so many things to think about, but the fact that they were things that a normal teenage boy had to figure out brought peace to his mind and he eventually closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep. End of chapter 133. Chapter 134, Ichigo's last high school summer. Third-person POV. Well, thank you for at least trying, Rita, Talbumasuk said to her as he and Mia stood inside her tower. Both had come to the warden in order to see if she could locate where Talbumasuk had sent their daughter, but she had found nothing. It was quite hard to do so without a name to go on. I'll let you know if I hear anything, Rita told him. It was moments like this that Rita was chosen to be the warden of hell. Any other person would have denied Talbumasuk his request and slammed the door in their face, but, as the Soul King said, Rita was impartial and kind-hearted to a fault. She believed in second chances, but that also made her incredibly gullible and allowed other Togabito to take advantage of her good nature. Thankfully she had the power to correct those mistakes. If violence wasn't solving the issue of a backstabbing Togabito, she just wasn't using enough of it. Of course, in Deracla's case, other measures had to be taken. Circle 9. Make it stop. Make it stop. The vampiric Togabito shouted. Rita was subjecting his mind to reruns of television shows that were incredibly cutesy and sugary as well as making him listen to a novelization about vegetarian fangless vampires and a pretentious teenage girl. Rita's tower. As Talbumasuk and Mia exited the tower, Rita stood in the doorway and spoke to Talbumasuk. You're doing well for yourself, she told him, keep up what you're doing and you should be released in a few decades. I won't leave Mia's side, even if it means leaving this place. And I won't leave until I know my daughter is safe, Talbumasuk said, back turned to Rita. That's a new one, most Togabito his rank would be thanking me by this point. Rita smiled. He really is changing for the better. It's days like this that I like my job. We should be going now, Talbumasuk said, Mia holding onto his arm. As they walked down the mountain together, their senses picked up a massive surge of Ryotsu. On their left they stopped as they passed a female Togabito with brown hair in an updo, wearing a black sleeveless coat over a sleeveless red shirt and a single detached sleeve on her left arm. She was wearing a short black skirt and had eyes as black as Zurich's. From the power being given off from her, Talbumasuk instantly recognized that this woman was stronger than him. But more than that, her Ryotsu seemed odd in a way. She had both Soul Reaper and Hollow DNA inside her. He watched her with a confused look. You are the number 3, a Tremere Talbumasuk, yes? The woman asked him. Ah, yes that's me and this is the number 69 with me, Aruri Mia. I see, the woman said and studied both Togabito for a moment. Is it fate or chance? I never can tell. I'm looking for allies for a grand scheme I have in the future. I would like you to be a part of it. Talbumasuk froze. This woman was obviously the number 1. He'd never met her, but her Ryotsu was a complete indication of her strength. Anyone who crossed paths with the number 1, of his rank, was supposedly cut down on the spot, but she was being rather civil to him. Someone he felt coerced not to refuse her request straight out. What exactly are you planning? A breakout, the woman responded. I know of you, a Tremere, she told him. I can free Aizen should you accept my proposal. Talbumasuk glared. My sensei was sentenced to many years in Circle 9. That's a no man's land. Point. Is she arrogant or is she really just that fearless? I guess I shouldn't expect any less. When is this plan of yours to happen? The woman looked up. By my calculations it's the summer of 2002 ATB on Earth. So approximately 18 years. Don't worry if you don't remember. The woman lowered her head and continued to look forward. I will find you without trouble. All I need to know is if you would like to join me. If you help me succeed, I will be able to help you find what it is you seek most. Oh really? Mia left her lover's embrace and twirled around to stand in front of the woman. You believe you know what he wants. It's the same thing you want. I've read your profiles. I'm the number one. I have access to all sorts of data at this tower. It's my privilege. And I'll say it again, Mia folded her arms, you honestly believe you can produce what we desire most. Like a demon of desire, the woman stated with a smirk. I don't know about this. Talbumasuk thought to himself. I've been trying to atone for everything I've done, but, help Aizen-sensei, I should do what I can to help him. If I had been fighting with him several months ago he probably wouldn't be in Circle 9 right now. I have to make up for it. Suddenly a jolt ran through him and Talbumasuk sensed something in the woman in front of him he hadn't mere moments ago. Hold up, this Ryotsu. I could tell immediately that she's got some hollow in her, but, the mixture. I wonder, Talbumasuk eased his eyes. Instead of looking for us, wouldn't you rather just travel with us? I move faster on my own and I trust no one, the woman glared at Talbumasuk. Mia was instantly confused by her lover's sudden change in stance on the situation. Then at least tell me your name, Talbumasuk asked. It's Kazumi, the number one responded. Are you done with your inane questions? I came here to speak with Rita. Yes, I'm sorry, by all means. Mia, please let her pass. Mia used Sonito to appear at Talbumasuk's side and Kazumi walked up the hill. Take care of yourself, Talbumasuk said to Kazumi. She paused momentarily, snorted to herself and walked up the mountainside. What was that all about? Mia asked her lover. She's far too old to be who we're looking for. Kazumi has been in hell for more than 2,000 years. The mythos of the number one was that she had arrived in hell some 23 centuries ago and built herself up completely from the bottom, having beaten the previous top 20, before she became number one right after the other, at the arena. It was also rumored that she absorbed all of their power to widen the gap between her and the Togabito that would then be the number two. Supposedly Kazumi had found a way, only to later lose it, to erase a Togabito from existence. How factual any of the myth was only two people in all of hell actually knew, the woman herself, and Rita. I know, but, Talbumasuk said with a smile and shook his head, sorry, I guess I wasn't thinking. It's just, her DNA matches perfectly. We'll find her, love. I know we will, Mia rested her head on Talbumasuk's chest. Talbumasuk held her. I know. And I won't give up on finding her either. I wonder though if things are a little more complicated than I imagine. The answer might be staring me right in the face, but, well, we'll see what happens in 18 years. Inside Rita's tower, the warden was surprised when Kazumi showed up at her front door. I wasn't expecting you so soon. Nothing new has come up for your search, I assure you. That's not why I'm here. Well, there's nothing I can ask your help for either, so. That's also not why I'm here, Kazumi said, arms folded. Then why are you here? Rita asked. Kazumi's eyes turned sympathetic. May I come in? Oh, of course. Rita let her inside and the two sat in Rita's small dining room at the wooden table lined with stone walls and a bookshelf in the corner of the circular room placed upon a blue, oval carpet. Shall I get you something? Water, perhaps. Tea. Some juice would be good. Make it cider actually, Kazumi stated. Right, one large container of cider coming right up. Rita returned to Kazumi with a glass so big Kazumi needed a straw to drink from it because her hand couldn't clasp around it all the way. Because of her hollow DNA, Kazumi's appetite was very voracious. It killed her half the time to have to constantly refuel. If it wasn't for the fact that she had learned magic to create food from thin air, she'd still be eating other Togabito to survive, an act that had really racked up her sentence. Rita sat down with a small cup of sorbet for herself and looked at Kazumi, who seemed troubled. It sucks, you know. What does? That you're the only person I can even come close to considering a friend. I hate you so much for what you did, and yet you're the only person I can even feel I can trust. Rita reached out to comfort Kazumi by touching her hand, but Kazumi swatted it away like it was instinct. Still sore about that, I see. I take it today is some special occasion then. Kazumi looked up as the ceiling to the room they were in went way up high towards the top of the tower. Today's 2000th anniversary of the day I became number 1. I see, so it's been that long. I thought you stopped keeping track of the years. I did, but you marked the incident with Aizen in the database. Counting simple days from there was not difficult. I see, Rita said, taking a spoonful. So why come to me? You said you'd never forgive me. I did, and I still haven't, but like I said, you're the closest thing I have to a friend in this world. It's so depressing. I'm really sorry, Rita apologized. Your apologies are meaningless. Rita knew that already, but that didn't mean she felt any less guilty about Kazumi's situation. Sighing, she clapped her hands twice. Hey! One of you manservants. Bring my friend and I some champagne. I thought drinking was a sin. Celebration exception clause, Rita responded. One of the members of the Central 46 came out sluggishly with Rita's demand. Hey, pick up the pace, what am I paying you for? You're not paying us at all, the man responded. Every member of Rita's new little squad was grudgingly working for her. As Anohana predicted, Rita was giving them hell. She was having them take care of her lovely tower and monitoring the 9 circles. She had 15 servants in all. I wasn't aware you acquired a boy toy, Kazumi joked. 15 of them. Courtesy of the Soul King and my daughter, Retsu. Kazumi knew Rita wasn't talking about a blood-born daughter. This wouldn't be the first time she and Rita were civil to one another. Kazumi might have hated Rita with a burning passion, but she knew that Rita was also the only way she would ever be able to be free of the chains that bound her. The servant poured Rita a glass of champagne and Kazumi one as well. That'll be all, Jenkins. It's Brayakin. Jenkins, Brayakin. Tomato, Rita flip-flopped her hand. You're still dismissed. The servant left. Kazumi could barely contain her laughter. Rita leaned back in her chair, arms behind her head. They can't fight worth shit, but they have their uses. She sat normally and picked up her glass. Anyway, she raised her glass, to the champion of Togabito. Cheers, Kazumi, and Rita clinked glasses and Kazumi went back to her cider. Rita watched her with a smile. It's nice when she's like this. I don't have to worry about her when she does. Today's been a pretty slow day so far and it's summer. She sighed. If only Retsu could enjoy some time under the sun, but I have to make sure. Rita's train of thought trailed off and her brain hatched an idea. Kazumi. The Togabito looked over to the squirrely Soul Reaper as she sipped her drink. Why don't you take a load off, stay here a week and relax? I'll even freeze your status so that you don't rack up any sloth points. Kazumi stopped sipping and leaned back, not buying it. All right, what's the catch? Rita sighed. Anyone with better judgment would have denied a catch, but Rita wound up being too honest and naive for her own good. She leaned back. Well, if you're here and I can keep an eye on you, then that means you're not scheming. If you're not scheming, the Soul Society can afford to take a break and Retsu deserves one. Kazumi actually smiled. You know, if that's the case, a break might be nice. I only get a week. I'll stay here longer to let them relax if you chop off some time. Rita extended her arm to Kazumi for a handshake. You got yourself a deal. The two women shook hands. 1 week later. And that, Kurosaka-san, is why we can all afford to be at the beach, Anohana finished her story to the teenager. She and many of the other Soul Reapers were at one of Karakura town's finest beaches. Urahara Kisuk had secluded the area from non-spiritually aware interference, despite the fact that everyone was in Jigai, so that the Seoul society could enjoy some fun under the sun. Anohana herself had her hair down and was wearing a white and blue one-piece swimsuit, but with no back to it and showing a little bit of her breasts out the sides of the suit. Ichigo was wearing a bright red button-down tropical t-shirt with a yellow pattern down the center of the open shirt. He was also wearing black swim trunks. I see, so Rita's the reason behind it. Are you sure this is still safe though? Ichigo looked around. There are a lot of captains here. Urahara-san, Meguruma-san, Tison Teiko, Zaraki Teiko, and Luska Teiko are more than capable of handling any high-level threat between the 5 of them. Lower-ranked officers are more than capable of handling normal hollows. According to Rita, Kazumi is really the only person we need to worry about that would require us all at assembly, and as I just told you, she's also taking a break. Kazumi-san. Ichigo remembered the brunette Togabito. One day I too will attempt to escape from here. And should we cross paths at that time, you and I will be enemies. Hey Ichigo, come on man, quit spacing out. Kigo called out to him. The full-bring user was wearing pale yellow swim trunks. Here, have a hot dog. Kigo handed Ichigo the elongated meat on a bun with mustard and onions on it. Ichigo ate it without saying anything. These are good. He swallowed. Who's cooking these? Ishida apparently. Huh? Isn't Hisuna-san here? I thought for sure that she would be. I'm over here. Ichigo heard the mother call out. She was waving over to him and Ichigo walked over to where she, Byakuya and the twins were. Hisuna was wearing a dark violet swimsuit with a V-cut. She was sitting under a beach umbrella and a green beach chair while wearing a straw sun hat and dark sunglasses. The twins were sitting in a proper-sized rocker, currently fast asleep. Isao had a toy shovel wrapped in his hands while Kyo was simply curled up. In exactly 2 weeks both would be a year old. Byakuya was standing over Hisuna wearing a light green shirt with a hood, Kenseiken out of his hair and royal purple swim trunks, almost matching Hisuna's suit, but a little bit lighter. Ichigo then noticed 2 servants coming from the shack and one knelt down in front of Hisuna. Your hot dog Hisuna-sama, the man presented it to her. Arigato, Hisuna said and picked it up. Akadame-sa. She took a bite. Byakuya then promptly plucked the napkin from the servant's shirt pocket and used it to gently wipe the mustard off Hisuna's face. He then looked at Ichigo. If you don't mind, this is a family outing. Right, I get it. Sheesh, Ichigo walked away and looked around the beach some more. He saw Naomi and Ribatuka, though he had no idea of the latter's identity, playing volleyball against Lisa and Mashiro. Naomi was wearing a mint green bikini showing off her sleek, athletic body and small-sized chest, while Ribatuka was wearing a one-piece suit that showed off her cleavage, but also her abdomen. Lisa was wearing a bikini that was sky blue with pink 8-petal flowers on it, and Mashiro was wearing a one-piece orange swimsuit. Ichigo watched the game for a bit as Naomi bumped the ball as Ribatuka spiked it, only for Lisa to jump up and slam the ball back hard towards Naomi. The ball spun in the girl's wrists as she bumped it way up into the air. Mine. Ribatuka took a tall leap into the air and slammed the ball into the other court so hard that it created a crater of sand all around it. A whistle sounded and Ichigo then took note that Yolanda was sitting in a high-up chair playing referee. She was wearing a red 2-piece swimsuit that showed off no cleavage, but anyone gazing upon her could see the 3 scars she had on her body. She had one running down across her navel in diagonal. She had one along her left bicep and a third on the outside of her right leg running from her knee to her ankle. Don't you have a girlfriend? The question nearly made Ichigo jump out of his skin. He growled when he saw Yoriyuki standing nearby. I was just watching the game for the game, he grimaced. Sure you were, the ebony woman teased. She ruffled his hair. There's still a teenage boy's brain in there. Don't deny it. Ichigo simply glared and growled. Yoriyuki was wearing a yellow and orange bikini showing an incredible amount of cleavage, and her nubile body was almost in full view. Were they not in an absolutely secure relationship, and also that Yoriyuki was no longer a noble, so iPhone would have encouraged her to pick out another outfit because it looked indecent. Speaking of so iPhone, the school teacher was currently getting food for both her and her lover and was walking towards Yoriyuki and Ichigo with a large tray. She was wearing a one-piece yellow swimsuit with two bows on it, one along the left shoulder and the other down by her right hip. She had voiced her opinion about wanting to pick out her own swimsuit and Yoriyuki had let her. On the tray of food, so iPhone was carrying some fries, 2 drinks, and 2 hamburgers. That looks great, B, Yoriyuki smirked. Come on, let's go get a table. Hi, Yoriyuki walked off and so iPhone looked at Ichigo before following suit. You deserve everything you do today. So do I. It's summer and we're unwinding. Even the greatest of warriors need at least one day to take a break. She left her student dumbfounded. It was like she had read his mind. Heads up. The volleyball suddenly went sailing through the air and clonked Ichigo in the face, knocking him to the ground. Naomi bounded forward to retrieve. Oh my gosh, are you okay, Ichigo? I got hit in the face with a volleyball. How do you think I feel? He snapped as he sat up. Sorry about that. We'll be more careful, though you probably shouldn't stand behind a side of the court. So I can tell, Ichigo said, getting to his feet. If you talk to the Suteiko again, tell her this was an excellent idea. Yeah, sure, Ichigo said as he walked off. He headed for the snack stand to get some ice. That hit to the face really hurt. When he got there he saw Renji, Kigo, Tatsuki, Ashido, Chad, Momo, Kayan, and Rukia all sitting around and eating. Oh, Ichigo, there you are, Tatsuki picked up her head. Ichigo's childhood friend was wearing a white bikini with red embroidery along the edges. It was shoulderless and had a hard time completely concealing both of Tatsuki's breasts. Most of her C-cup chest was covered, but the top was showing just a little bit. Renji was wearing a white wife-beater tank top with blue swim trunks. Kigo was now wearing a shirt to match his shorts. Momo was wearing a bright red swimsuit in a very similar design to Yolanda's, but Momo's was also without shoulder straps. There were also white lines running across the cups and there was a pair of strings on either hip side. Kayan was wearing ocean blue swim trunks and Rukia was wearing a pink bikini with red embroidery over and was currently wearing an opened pink shirt that didn't go below her chest line over it. Chad was wearing a similar shirt to Ichigo, only it had yellow petals instead of 2 yellow stripes down the button line, and he was also wearing dark green swim trunks. Ashido was wearing a dog tag along with and black swim trunks that were very form-fitting while the rest of his toned body was exposed to the sunlight. Ichigo then noticed the surfboard resting against the side of the deck. Whose is this? It's mine, Ashido answered, brought it with me. You surf? Ichigo asked. Haven't in over 3.5 centuries, Ashido looked up at the sun. I haven't even been under the summer sun in nearly that long. He looked at Ichigo. So I'm eager to see what I still remember. Ichigo looked towards the water. Well, the waves are tearing up the coastline, so you might want to get a jump on that. Well, I just ate and that's bad for digestion. Besides, I'm waiting for my partner. Partner? Ichigo asked. Akari-sama, Ashido answered. She's the one who taught me how to surf. Akari-san surfs? Ichigo asked. He had gotten to know Mari in the time she'd been around Karakura town. He considered her a good person in the few months he'd known her. Ashido nodded. Best in all of Seoul society from what I remember. Just like Yoriyuki is excellent at deep-sea diving. Do all of the captains have a special beach-related talent? Tatsuki asked Ashido. Well, Yukatake-san normally just lounges about. He gets heat stroke quite easily, and the last time I remember being on the beach, Kiraku Teiko nearly got us kicked out. Why? You're better off not knowing. Ichigo looked over to the changing rooms to see Mari and Yuna approaching the deck. Mari was wearing a diving suit and holding her surfboard with the ring clamped to her ankle. Yuna was wearing a pure black bikini. Try me, Ichigo retorted. Mari sighed. We all found Kiraku face down over a young woman who screamed that she was being assaulted, but Kiraku Teiko insisted to us that a hollow attacked and he ducked down to save her. He told the lifeguards he simply tripped. Glazed looks swept across the deck. Told you. Oh, Ichigo, I didn't think you'd show. From the men's side of the changing room, Ichigo saw Lelich walk forward. The young-looking captain was dressed in a black, lycra t-shirt, and red swim trunks. I wouldn't have if Orium didn't say she was going to be here. Speaking of which, where is she? He looked at Tatsuki as she asked. Tatsuki pointed to the door that led to inside the shack. She's helping inside. She and Urayu are in charge of food. Ichigo suddenly turned green. I know what you're thinking, but don't worry, Urayu's doing most of the cooking. Orium's just an assistant. She's doing more than just assist, a mature voice came from over by the entrance. Yoshino was standing behind the counter. Hey Ichigo, glad you could make it. Oh, Yoshino, how are you? Ichigo asked. Pretty good, things are fine back here. Like I was saying, Urayu and I have been giving your girlfriend a crash course in fast food. She's a little creative with recipes, but she can grill and fry just fine. Ichigo couldn't see it since Yoshino was standing behind a wooden counter, but the Bount woman was wearing a black one-piece swimsuit with several yellow horizontal stripes that made her look a little bit like a bumblebee. Well, ask her to come out. Tell her I want to see her. No problem. You want something to eat? We're in charge back here so it's all free. After all, this is all on the Soul Society's budget. I guess a cheeseburger might be nice and some fries. Right, coming right up. Yoshino leaned off the counter and went back inside. Ichigo sat down next to Kigo at the picnic table. Lelouch sat down across from him. I'm surprised you're here. I never figured fun under the sun was your thing. Normally it's not, but Rangiku insisted, Lelouch answered. Why are you two so glum? We're at the beach. Lots of scantily clad women. Waves. And I heard later there's watermelon smashing. Speak for yourself, Ichigo and Lelouch said at the exact same time with unamused looks and their knuckles resting under their chin. Okay, that's scary, Yuna commented. I agree, Iin Tamashi said in Lelouch's head. Ashido, are you ready? Mari asked him. Yeah, let's head out and see if I remember how to do this. Ashido stood up from the table and grabbed his surfboard. You going to come watch Lelouch? Yuna asked. Maybe later, Lelouch said, I'm wondering what's taking Rangiku and Susanna so long. Unless you can tell me that. When I was leaving Soul Society, Rangiku was arguing with Ichimaru Teiko about not wearing a speedo. Lelouch, Kigo, and Ichigo looked like they were about to be sick. Renji nearly choked. Yeah, I hope she convinces him otherwise too. As for Susanna, she's almost done. She was a little self-conscious about the sun lotion thing, so she might take a while. Right, that's understandable. Lelouch knew where Nemia was. She was down by the water along the coast. Anohana had asked her to do something for her. Lelouch couldn't think of anything dangerous at the beach Anohana would ask Nemia to do, so he didn't inquire further. The artificial Soul Reaper was wearing a swimsuit matching the kind distributed in most high schools. Anyway, I guess I'll see you later. Ah, Ichigo, you're here. The excited cry from the entrance to the snack shack alerted Ichigo to the presence of his girlfriend. Orium was wearing a yellow swimsuit with 3 green 3-leaf clovers on it, one on each cup and one on the lower piece. She casually walked forward with the tray of food she was carrying, set it down and gave her boyfriend a big hug. She then stood at arm's length from him, hands on the sides of his torso. I'm really glad you came. Yeah, well, right now you're the only reason I'm here. Ah, don't be such a sourpuss, Ichigo. The beach is a lot of fun. You tell him, Inu. Tell Ichigo to stop being such a stick in the mud. Of course, right after we eat, Orium said, I was so hungry, but I waited for you to show up, Ichigo, cause I wanted to eat with you because we're going out, and Orium was talking so fast that Ichigo had to put a finger to her lips. She blushed. All right, I get it, he grinned, let's eat. They sat in front of the food. Akademesa. As they were eating, footsteps approached the shack and a voice spoke out, not to the other beachgoers, but loud enough to alert them to her presence. Drat, she's not here either. Everyone looked to the edge of the shack where Kendra was standing. The vice captain of Squad 2 had been asked to go to the beach by her captain, despite her workaholic attitude. Stefan told her that she needed some time off and that he would stay. Of course, Stefan wasn't much of a beachgoer. Kendra, of course, made a joke of this. You sure about that? If I'm going, that means I won't be dressed professionally. Not just me, but everyone else. You're going to pass up that opportunity. Stefan shut down Kendra's retort with a sly smirk and a retort of, "There's a hole between the partitions at the onsen." Kendra's jaw dropped. So here she was at the beach, looking puzzled to the others as she scratched her head, but she looked absolutely stunning. Once again, Kendra proved that you didn't need a chest the size of Ranjaku, Kyokaku, Yoriyuki, or Shisato to be beautiful and sexy beyond words. Kendra was wearing a swimsuit similar to Anohana, only that hers had a back and was yellow and orange where Anohana's would have been blue and sky blue. Still, despite showing off zero cleavage, which fell in line with Kendra wishing not to objectify herself and having serious pride in her self-image, she looked amazing from what was exposed. To every guy sitting at the table she looked great. To Kigo she looked amazing. In Kigo vision one could see the well-tweezed eyelashes blinking over emerald green eyes. The same person could see Kendra's soft lips, and further down her breasts were pressing firmly against the confines of her swimsuit, and Kendra's arms and legs with smooth and silky. To the others it was easy to see Kendra's puzzled expression. To Kigo it looked like she was pushing her hair back and smiling, admiring the sun and sand as her chestnut brown hair flapped in the salty air. Once again, defying all laws of physics, Kigo caught fire and fell backwards out of his spot at the table onto the ground, singed. Ichigo turned his head, saw Kigo, shrugged and continued eating. "Something the matter, Otamaka Fukotaiko?" Renji asked her. "I can't find Yukatake Fukotaiko anywhere. You guys seen her at all? You're not looking for Naomi?" "Oh, I know where Miyamoto is," Kendra said and jerked her thumb over her left shoulder. "Volleyball." Lelouch perked up in intrigue. "I've never heard you refer to her like that before. I thought only she had the older sister idea in her head." "Yes, well, she did save my life and the captain's life." Kendra folded her arms. "I sort of owe her and have newfound respect for her. With Yasui Gonwi, that is the captain, and I tested Naomi and she passed with flying colors. She's now our third seat. Kurakata-san got her old position. But anyway, none of you have seen the Suteiko's Fukotaiko." "Can't say I have," Lelouch stated. "Me neither," Renji replied. Kayan and Rukia also shook their heads. "Ugh." Kendra growled in frustration. "What's the matter?" Kayan asked her. "Anohana Suteiko asked me to find her, but I haven't seen her anywhere. She could be hiding in the changing room. Have you tried there yet?" Lelouch pointed and asked. "I was in there when we were all getting changed. She left before me." Kigo suddenly sprouted to his feet. "What was she wearing?" "I never forget a woman's attire. Maroon bikini with a white skull print very similar to a news clover print over here." "Well, you're in luck. I saw her." Kendra could hardly believe her ears. "Where?" "I saw her over by the forest area. She was gathering wood." "Oh, she must have heard we're roasting marshmallows later." "That's our Vera-chan, taking the initiative," Kayan commented. "Great, I can tell Anohana Suteiko right now." "Thanks guys." Kendra ran off. The group ate until Lelouch eventually stood up. "If Susanna ever comes out of the changing room, tell her to come find me, okay?" he asked. "Yeah, no problem," Ichigo said, eating another fry. Lelouch took a walk around the beach until he spotted Shisato sitting under a beach umbrella, much like Hisuna was. Yumi Chika and the baby were with her. Shisato was wearing a blue bikini with a cloud print, while Yumi Chika was just wearing a pink t-shirt with yellow swim trunks. Yachiro was sitting with them, wearing a red and white polka-dotted two-piece swimsuit, carefully watching Shisato hold her baby, Kiyaki, in her arms. The third seat of Squad 10 was wearing sunglasses, like Hisuna, but not a hat, and she had a radio next to her and was using the diaper bag as a backrest. "Keikun is so cute," Yachiro exclaimed. "When will he be old enough to play?" "You have to be patient, Kusajishi Fukotaiko, babies take a while to become kids. Isn't that right?" She rubbed her nose into her son's chest and he laughed, only to pull at Shisato's hair. "Oh ow, Kiyaki, darling, please go of mommy's hair." Any. "Keikun, you shouldn't treat Blondie like that. You're hurting her." Yachiro objected. It was the most amazing thing when Kiyaki let go of Shisato and actually listened to Yachiro. "Sounds like someone's enjoying acting like a big sister," Lelouch commented. "Ah. Lulu." "It's Lulu," Kei-kun. How are you, sir? Shisato asked, looking up at her captain. Bored as I'll ever be right now, but I'm making the most of it. You guys need this more than I do. Yes, that's certainly true. Kiyaki seems like he's enjoying the beach a lot and Kuzujishi Fukutaiko's being a big help. You guys just don't understand Kei-kun well enough, she said. Shisato giggled. Lelich almost cracked a smile. The situation was really cute. Yumi Chika, be a dear and go get me a cheesesteak, would you? Shisato asked. Of course. Yumi Chika got up and left. Kuzujishi Fukutaiko, could you hold Kiyaki for me please? I need to stretch and talk to my captain. Sure, no problem. Yachiro sat on the towel as Shisato carefully placed Kiyaki in her lap and Yachiro held onto him. Shisato walked out from underneath the shade of the umbrella to talk to Lelich. I know what you wanna ask and things have been pretty great really. Kiyaki's the talk of the household and neither of my parents suspect that Yumi Chika isn't the biological father. Well, that's good. How's the whole motherhood thing going on its own? As one might expect. Babies are a handful. I feel bad for Hisuna-san given that she has 2 children to take care of, but her house is a much bigger than mine so she has more servants to keep an eye on her kids. That's a double-edged sword, Shisato. After all, a bigger house means there's more places for my godchildren to get lost. Shisato laughed and said, you've got a point there. You know, I thought Yumi Chika wouldn't be able to keep things together, but he's done a really good job. If I didn't know any better I'd say he wasn't doing this just because the child is his best friend's son. Maybe you don't know better, Lelich said. What are you implying? Shisato crinkled her brow. Give it time. I think you'll figure it out. You're no dumb blonde. Shisato chuckled again. Well, thanks for coming over this way and thanks for giving me clearance to come out. I needed this. I know I didn't exactly earn it like the others, but... Don't start, Lelich told her, you protected your son with your life. We lost several good soldiers in that battle. You'll eventually have to tell Kiyaki the truth about his father. I can't imagine a son being raised without both biological parents. Despite having been kicked out of Britannia, Lelich at least knew, if only for a little while, what it was like to have a mother and father. Not knowing your parents? Lelich couldn't think of a greater tragedy. What would be even worse is what if there was no one to take care of you, no one to raise you and no orphanage to take care of you. Separated from your parents at birth for some reason or another, left alone to cry and starve. Would you stop? You're giving me angst cramps again. Sorry. Lelich snapped from his thoughts and looked at Shisato. I should go. See you later. Lelich continued to walk about the beach until he found Yukatake resting in a sand structure with flowers all placed around him and incense wafting out. It was cinnamon-scented. Who set this up? I did, of course. Lelich looked over to see Kian in her green bikini with her hand gripping the end of a shovel with the tip planted firmly in the ground. The captain said he wasn't feeling well, so I constructed the walls to keep out the salty air and got the flowers to block away the sun. Then I set up the incense to make it easier for him to sleep. Yeah, but, you set it up like this. Lelich cupped his fingers to his chin, and it kind of looks like a funeral. Kian let out the most amusing scream of realization. She then looked at the setup. Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that. How do I fix this? She whined as she grabbed her hair with both hands. Calm down, Kian-chan. I'm sure Joshiro doesn't care. He'd just be happy to have a subordinate who cares about his welfare so much. Lelich, I'm surprised at you. Lelich looked to his left to see Shunsui sitting in a beach chair as he was sitting near the sandy cliff which stood between him and the forest where Vera was gathering firewood. Shunsui was wearing an opened pink shirt exposing a lot of his chest hair and was wearing green swim trunks with dark green and orange maple leaves printed on them. He was wearing his umbrella hat and was laying back with his hands clasped over his stomach. You shouldn't demean a lady's hard work. That's just cruel. I just call things as I see them, Lelich commented. Where's Isane-san? I thought she was with you guys. Kian pointed in a specific direction and Lelich looked over his shoulder. Isane was standing over by the water watching the waves, looking entranced. She was wearing a gray and brown swimsuit that exposed a lot of cleavage around the sides and down by her navel, Ironic for someone more insecure about her appearance than Susanna. Lelich followed her gaze and then noticed a wave along the coast and Ashido riding it. He watched the vice captain leap off the tip of the wave, spin and land on the same wave, continuing to ride it. Wow! That was amazing! Kian exclaimed. Kano-kun's really good. Surfing must be like riding a bike. I'll say, Lelich agreed, impressed. When he was growing up in Japan he hadn't watched much surfing, but he knew about it. He'd never even been down to the beach his entire time he was alive. He'd been to Clovis Pool as a kid, but he had never been fortunate enough to experience some time in the sand and sun. He did not count the time on Common Island with Yuffie. That was nothing like this. Lelich decided he was going to get a closer look. After all, Ashido was swimming with Mari and he said she had taught him. If Ashido was amazing, Mari had to be next to godly. Lelich stood next to Isane to watch. Oh, Lelich-kun, I didn't even hear you approach. That's because you're focused on Ashido, Lelich told her. What are you saying? Isane nearly jumped off the ground and put a hand on her cheek in instinct. Ayah! Why is my cheek so warm? Lelich chuckled to himself. Rivals always told me surfing attracted the female populace. Looks like he was right. Oh look, there goes Akari-sama, Isane pointed to where Akari was paddling her way deep into the water to wait. Lelich watched her and then saw the gigantic wave headed her way. It was huge. Lelich had analyzed the size of the wave Ashido had been riding. It was 10 meters at best. The one Akari was currently approaching was more than twice that size. Oh my god! Lelich heard a screech and looked over to see Yuna. Mari-sama, you can't take on something that big. Are you crazy? Maybe she is, Lelich joked. That's not funny, Lelich. The bigger the wave, the bigger the danger. She's never taken on something that big. Maybe not when you were with her, Lelich suggested. I didn't think waves could even get that big without a storm to make them that size, Isane put in. You think Urahara-san's manipulating the laws of nature to give us a good time. Oh, I'm so glad you can make light of Mari-sama's life or death situation right now. Yuna, relax. It took a Vastolords to beat Akari-senpai the first time. I doubt a 22-meter wave is going to do her in. Lelich was right, of course. Mari knew what she was doing. She rode straight up to the wave and made her approach. She slid right through the tube created as the wave began to foam over before she turned, flipped, and rode along what was now the top of the wave. She made her way to the center of the wave and turned so that she was facing towards the shore and rode the wave all the way to the edge. Yuna was in awe. I told you there was nothing to worry about, Lelich said to her. Mari walked up the beach towards Lelich and Yuna. Whew, what a rush. That's the 5th biggest wave I've been on. 5th. Yuna was now even more surprised. Yuna, I've been surfing for 300 years since before the day you and I met. If there's one regret I had in my life besides the obvious, it's that I wasn't around for this really big wave that hit the northwestern coast of the Britannia mainland a while back. Big wave in northwest Brighton. Lelich realized what Mari was talking about and couldn't believe she was that crazy. Akari-senpai, that thing was 500 meters tall in icy cold water. It was so big it blocked out the moon from the coastline. A rogue wave? Mari-sama, do you want to see me pass out? I was joking, Mari laughed, you two take things too seriously. She put the surfboard in the sand. In all honesty though, I have seen my fair share of large waves on other living worlds. She scratched her head. I think the biggest one I rode out was during a storm. It was before I met Ashido. The wave was 74 meters high. Yuna looked like she was about to faint. The idea of Mari taking that big of a risk made her feel like upchucking her lunch. True, Yuna had seen Mari through worse, but death by the ocean was different than death by hollow. At least Yuna could fight hollows, whereas any wave bigger than her would knock her off her feet. Yuna wasn't afraid of the water by any means, but unlike her captain, she was no thrill seeker. Akari, that was amazing. I saw that from back there. Lelich smiled as he turned to see Ranjika running up to the group. She had finally arrived. She was wearing a white bikini with 5-petal pink flower petals, though she may as well have been wearing nothing with the way she was dressed. After all, she was wearing a G-string bikini. Lelich had to do his very best to avert his eyes from where they wanted to look. Both Yuna and Mari had similar problems. How did you get them so big? Yuna outcried. You're only noticing that now? Lelich asked in disbelief considering how Ranjika wore her uniform all the time. Ranjika laughed, just luck of the draw, any Yuna-chan. She snuck behind her and grabbed her chest. Don't worry, you'll get big soon. Stop it. Lelich is right there. Yuna flushed. Yuna was not flat by any means, but compared to Ranjiku, Isane and Mari she felt very inadequate. Lelich, rather than give in to the potentiality of watching two scantily clad women go at it, asked a more important question. Ranjiku, please tell me you convinced Jin not to wear a speedo. He gripped at his face with a frustrated look. Ranjiku gave a thumbs up and a wink. Mission accomplished. She then looked up. Though I dare say I don't think he'd look that bad in one. You want to see that, do it when you two are alone, that's your business. Might I remind you there are children on this beach? Seriously Ranjiku, what was Ichimaru Teiko even thinking? I know what he was thinking, Lelich said, not removing his hand from his face. He probably thought it would be funny to gross everyone out. Aw come on now, I ain't that bad. Speak of the devil, Yuna folded her arms. Jin was wearing sky blue trunks with pink flowers on them, matching Lisa's bikini. Jin, that's bullshit. I think I know you better than that. Jin laughed, nah, if I were gonna make you guys uncomfortable I have other ways. Don't we all know it, Yuna scoffed. Yup. Like the now dead Omada family in a speedo. Jin said and then vanished with flash step. Oh god damn it, now I'll never be able to unsee that. Lelich shouted. Back at the snack shack, Momo was playing shogi with Hitsugaya. Her captain didn't like hot climates, so she decided to spend a little time with him rather than push him out into the sunlight if he was going to be uncomfortable. Momo was about to take her turn when Susanna poked her head in. Hey, have you guys seen Lelich? Sensei said he was going down by the beach. I made him wait too long. Thanks Momo. Susanna left. Are you sure you don't want to come smash the watermelons later, Shiro-chan? I'll come out to toast marshmallows. At least it'll be cool, Hitsugaya complained. Well, suit yourself. Down at the beach Susanna ran about looking for Lelich. She was wearing a one-piece silver swimsuit with vertical ridges along it. As she ran around she finally spotted him down in the water and he looked like he was actually having fun for once. He, Yuna, Mari, Ranjiku and Isane were splashing each other as the waves came in and out. Why are you just standing around? Susanna heard Kyokaku from behind her. The woman was wearing a red G-string bikini, but currently she was wearing short shorts over her bottoms at the moment. Huh? And no, I am fine right here. You're a poor liar Shapini, Kyoko said to her. There are friends. No one here thinks badly of you. I know I don't. Smiling Susanna charged towards the water. Wait for me everyone. She began to head towards the water only for a black branch of some kind to reach up out of the ground and grab her by the ankle. She screamed. Kyokaku met the same fate as did the girls playing volleyball. What the hell is going on? Lelich shouted as the black tentacles grabbed everyone around him except him. He ran towards Anohana demanding an explanation. I was afraid of this. With this many Soul Reapers in one single area there were bound to be hollows. Lelich Dano. Susanna cried out. Gah! There's a tentacle in my swimsuit. Isane cried out in panic, face flushing. Mari, as the only one not amused by this turn of events at all, bit down hard on the offending appendage and was thrown from her prison with a quick flick. She hit the ground on her shoulder. Yuna! Hold on! She shouted. No, save your strength, Anohana told her. But, why? Mari asked. Suddenly the ground began shaking and the tentacles appeared to be attached to bodies of oval-shaped, green and black-stripped, multi-eyed creatures. What the hell are those things? Ichigo shouted. They're a new breed of hollow that stalk beaches, Anohana responded. Yeah, well, I'm about to make them extinct, Lelich said and drew back his hands to ready Aikido. Heido 73, Soren Sakasui. He blasted the hollow that had Yuna and Susanna in its grasp and it exploded into red goop. Yuka roused from his sleep. Oh, it seems Nimue-san got the watermelons out. Watermelons? Lelouch was confused. Yuna licked the goop on her arm. Hey. This is watermelon. Lelouch had a look on his face of complete dumbfoundedness and confusion. Like there was just a big question of why. Hanging on his lips. We were developing a type of anti-hollow combat species. The rind is the weak spot, but the vines absorb reishi. Lelouch saw Nimue coming up to everyone with Vera at her side carrying a sack along her back. What's in the bag, Vera? Lelouch asked. Vera unwrapped the back revealing gigantic wooden spears. She then made a throwing motion followed by an explosion. Oh, I get it, we're supposed to use these on the watermelons. Yuna picked one up. But why are they? Problem, Lelouch. Jin appeared. Lelouch looked at Jin with a glazed look. Suddenly this isn't so much of a shock anymore. Yay. Watermelons. Yachiro came dashing over and grabbed a stick of her own before picking one up and sending it sailing right through one of the perverted creatures. It was around this time that Kigo was coming back from the water, completely soaked to the bone next to a much drier Ashido. Kigo had asked the older gentleman for help with surfing and got wiped out several times. He brightened up though when he saw the watermelons and the hostages. Watermelons and fanservice? This is the best day ever. Kigo picked up a stick and went into action. Ashido looked at Lelouch with a raised eyebrow. You're better off not knowing, Lelouch responded. How many of these things did you make? Ichigo asked Jin. Well, we got plenty more for field test against hollows back at the Research Bureau, but I think I brought I don't know 7 or 8. Oh, that's not so many. Dozen. Pardon. 7 or 8 dozen, Jin smiled. Lelouch sighed, this is going to be a long day. And it was a long day. Thankfully the watermelon smashing proved to be a lot less invasive on the female beachgoers after a while and eventually they just became targets. After the sun went down, and everyone was full of watermelon, Uryu and Yoshino started up a charcoal grill, with Gerda's help, and everyone roasted marshmallows and made s'mores. Ichigo and Lelouch thought that would be the end of it, but the beach was rented out for more than a day. Sleeping bags had been brought and the group would be spending one entire week of fun under the sun. As Orium lay next to Ichigo on the beach, neither one falling asleep yet they looked up at the stars. Suddenly one went streaming across the sky. Oh my gosh, a shooting star. Make a wish then, Ichigo told her. I wish I could spend the rest of my life at Ichigo's side. Done. Keeping silent about it. Orium pushed on his nose. If I tell you what I wished for it won't come true. She turned over and snuggled against her boyfriend. But for right now it is true, she mumbled and fell asleep. Ichigo looked up at the starlit sky. Despite the insanity, the day had been fun. Sensei was right, I guess I really do need to unwind once in a while. I wonder what we're gonna do tomorrow. End of chapter 134. Chapter 135, Tatsuki Bears All. Third-person POV. It was the middle of autumn and Rita found herself with some free time on her hands, so she was spending some hours conversing with Anohana. Currently she was laughing her ass off. I take it the watermelons went over well then. If by well you mean getting a little friendly with most of the female attendees, Anohana said with a soft smile. Rita continued to chuckle. I can't believe I didn't even put you up to this. You and Ichimaru decided on this. Well, it was Nimue who infused them with essence of watermelon, and it was Jin's idea to make them grabby. I was the one who dictated the idea of bringing them along. Wait, Nimue made them watermelons before you went to the beach. It was an accident really. Lelouch had brought her some slices from a package he got from a hopeless suitor in one of the lower noble families under the Shibas. He may not be nobility, but having good graces with two of the high-standing noble clans does attract the eyes towards him. But anyway, Nimue accidentally knocked them into the experiment she was stirring up and the essence got mixed in. Rita just laughed. Maybe if she had knocked sugar, spice, and everything nice into her mixture we might have gotten anti-hollow kindergarten-aged girls. Now both of them were laughing themselves silly. Rita eventually cleared her throat and changed the topic with, I've seen your interactions with Vera. You're being very motherly towards her. From the tone of your voice I take it you approve, Anohana said and then got wry. Does that make you a grandmother? Rita laughed. Oh, 2,000 years of potential conversation wasted. Retsu, I should be a great-grandmother at this point at the rate my body's been going. Sadly I've never had the opportunity to, well you know. You're kidding. Anohana exclaimed. I've been in hell all by myself Retsu. It's just me, magazines, pictures and videos. Oh well I'm sure we could fix that if we tried, Anohana said with a gleam in her eye. I appreciate the intent Retsu, but that's not going to happen, Rita waved her hands in front of her in protest. I still believe I can find happiness somehow. And I still look pretty damn good if you haven't noticed. Must be the animal DNA. Ironic since squirrels have a shorter lifespan than humans, Rita stated, but then again nothing makes much sense once you're dead. Hell once you're off your home planet things are a little crazy. You went to other worlds. As a soul reaper, not when I was alive. Yeah gods that was so far back I hardly even remember my childhood. Well I'm glad you stopped by. Oh I had to know how that week at the beach went. I needed to make sure you had fun. Rita smiled. What kind of mother would I be if I didn't check up on my daughter? Anohana smiled back. I'm glad I made it possible then. Yes, thank you. It means a lot to me, having a little bit more freedom and free time. It's a bit worrisome having other people command the kushanda, but they know which is the hand that feeds and which is the hand that's on the string. Every time you describe your job I almost feel like I would enjoy it. You probably would. Sadly I have too much to teach you for me to take you away from being Suteiko. Besides there's no one who could adequately substitute for you with the state it's currently in. Speaking of which, you didn't replace your own position. How come? The only qualified candidates for captaincy are Abarai Renji and Shiba Kayan, neither have a healer's instinct, if you will. Hinamari-kun does have it, but she has yet to learn to control that ungodly power she unleashed against Aizen's minion. I'd dare not see that in the healing division. I warned Aizen of such. Rita scratched her head. I still question how that happened. Bankai shouldn't have made up the difference between her and Zurich. Hinamari-kun holds back a lot of aggression that's part of who she's become. It's possible there's this other side to her, much like there was with Kurosaki Ichigo that maximizes her strength when she is upset. That's a pretty weak theory, Rita commented. Do you have one then? I think it's far more likely she turned the very Reishi itself against him. But that would mean she would have to have had complete dominance over Reishi. Not what I was referring to. I observed your allies so I knew where to make an entrance at the proper time. Right before she used that form she showed to have power over gravity in a certain area. To increase gravity using a Zanpakuto requires the Reishi to become dense. In other words, besides just using her own Ryutsu, Hinamori has the ability to command the very Reishi itself into her attacks, amplifying the strike even more. Right before she attacked Zurich with that lightning, she already increased the density of some of the surrounding Reishi using her gravity attack and then she shocked him into submission using power from the very sky and all around her. She's not dominating the Reishi. No, more like she's using it to her advantage, taking more potential energy and making it kinetic. That kind of power makes her attacks almost nearly lethal, but her stamina might be shot as a result. Can you confirm this? You wouldn't want me to. My methods aren't exactly safe. I will say that if she can master her Bankai you've got yourself a good replacement. Give her some opportunity and you'll get the Godei back on its feet. I'll take your advice then. Rita nodded. Now if you'll excuse me. I should be heading home. I'm here if you need me. Of course, Anohana responded and watched Rita vanish. Karakura Town. Chizuru sat down by a tall tree just outside the school. It was lunchtime, but she wasn't really hungry, and she had forgotten her lunch at home anyway. She was left here, with only her thoughts. Said thoughts belonged to a mind she wasn't particularly satisfied with. She had gone wrong, and she knew it. It was all Orium, it had always been Orium. The point was, and this was a hard-earned realization, shed out of her mind with the determined grit of a drug addict struggling desperately to go clean, it couldn't always be Orium. She remembered the first time she had seen her, years back. She was just so beautiful. It wasn't the first time she had been attracted to a girl, but it was the first time she had felt that stir, those butterflies in her stomach, the pure sensation of want. Desire, the need to hold her, be with her, love her and give her everything life could offer. In retrospect, it felt a little wrong that feelings this genuine had turned into unadulterated lechery. It had now been 2 years since she had left the realm of possibility as a lover, 2 years since she had hooked up with that Kurosaki. 2 years, a time which had left her older and hopefully a little wiser. At the time, she had hated Kurosaki with the white-hot passion of a burning sun, and she still resented him for it, but by now, it had ebbed out to a slight dislike. What had changed? It really all begun half a year ago. On a train ride out of Tokyo, some pervert had groped her, shamelessly cupping her rear, even trying to get inside her panties. The episode did not end well for the pervert. She had mazed him quite badly, and when he was writhing on the floor, screaming in agony, she had taken the opportunity to step on his testicles for good measure. She had delivered a long, venomous speech to him on the evils of objectifying, humiliating him in front of all these people as the social reject he was. Even through her anger, it had been glorious. But when she came back home the next day, she had sat down and reflected on the event, and slowly the complete and utter hypocrisy of her self-righteous speech had hit her, slowly at first but with increasing speed. That nagging little voice of her head, the sensible little spirit that had so long been drowned in all matters relating to a new Orium, had come out and admonished her. "What is the difference," it had asked, "between you and that pervert? Is there any at all?" And after having sat down for an hour or so, thinking deeply on the matter, she realized there really wasn't. To her, it had always been fun, and Orium hadn't seemed to mind. But now, a year and a half older, faced with the reality that Orium simply wasn't hers, she realized that she had, for all this time, done wrong. She had buried her face in her hands and cried. Partly because Orium was with the wrong person, and partly out of shame. What was she to do? Even now, half a year later, she hadn't yet worked up the courage to apologize. What was she to do? Say something along the lines of, "Sorry for grossly disrespecting your personal integrity all these years?" She shook her head. Orium was, at that time, an obsession. She had had pictures of her in her room, dozens of them on the wall. Was that all she had become? She had wondered, a stalker and a pervert. That day, she had torn down the pictures. This was not good for her. She knew a little bit about addiction. Her father drank a lot, and it had left him a wreck. Orium was her own brand of alcohol, and she could not let it destroy her. She had not yet fully let go. It was the definitive fantasy of her youth, the ideal of what she had wanted the most. Letting go was like uprooting an oak tree, not done easily, that is. There was even a certain someone with a funny, somewhat sassy personality, a shared appreciation of good pornography, with nice boobs and a really rather good personality, with whom there maybe possibly could be a something, maybe sex, maybe more. There was only this one obstacle, this lustful want. "Hi, Chizuru-chan. Speak of the devil." It was the object of her affection herself, taking a seat next to her. Chizuru forced a smile. "Hi. Is there something wrong?" Orium asked innocently. Sometimes Chizuru wasn't sure whether her clueless personality was all an act. "You look upset. What are you talking about?" Chizuru said, trying to sound happily dismissive. "I'm just fine. Hey, what about that boyfriend of yours, how is he doing?" "You're upset. Damn." The girl had to be a lot smarter than she looked. "It's really nothing." Chizuru shook her head, laughing nervously. "I'm just fine. No need to worry dash." "What is it, Chizuru-chan?" Orium sounded serious, concerned. Chizuru rubbed her temples. She couldn't lie to Orium. "There is just." "Yes, Chizuru-chan." "Oh, fuck it." Like a band-aid, fast and painful, but it had to be done. "I'm sorry." Orium blinked. "Why?" Chizuru tried to find the words. You know." Orium remained quiet, and Chizuru looked at her in desperation. "It's just, you know how I used to, grab your..." She trailed off lamely. "You mean these?" Orium said, pushing up her sizable breasts. Yeah, what about them? Look, how to say this, really? She would mess up. I shouldn't have done a thought. Okay. Arisawa was right. She glared at nothing in particular. I was being a massive pervert, and... She shook her head. It wasn't so bad. Orium said offhandedly. It was. Chizuru exclaimed. Oh god, Orium, I've been so. Orium just looked at her questioningly. It could never be you and I, could there? Chizuru said quietly. No, it couldn't. Orium said solemnly. I love Ichigo, and that's not going to change. Ever. I figured that's the way it was. She mumbled weakly. He's a real nice big jerk, isn't he? He is. Orium nodded. Well. Chizuru shook her head again. She felt more than a little upset now. This was worse than when, well, anything she could think of, really. I'm just sorry. I've done some really stupid things I'm not proud of, and dash. Like when you tried to sabotage me and Ichigo. Yes, that. Chizuru put a palm to her face. And since we're at it, I sort of stalked you for a while too. I've. She was at a loss for words. I forgive you. Orium said simply. Just like that. She nodded. It's partly my fault, really. You I should have said no. You're not a bad person, Chizuru-chan, but you have or you did have some boundary issues. I should have been clearer on what was okay and what wasn't. I see that now. Chizuru gaped. But. You apologized, and that's enough. Orium smiled cheerily. We can still be great friends, Chizuru-chan. You're not a bad person. The sincerity of her optimistic statement hit Chizuru like a hammer. All this, and not so much as a harsh word, this optimistic, almost naive preparedness to see good in others even when they had wronged her, that was one of the qualities that had made Chizuru love her. It was all too much. Finally tears began to trail down Chizuru's cheeks. Orium put an arm on her shoulder. It will be okay. You're not a bad person. I really am, Chizuru sniffed. All I did dash. It's okay. For a few minutes, they just sat there, Chizuru crying. It was overwhelming for her, for Chizuru. She had known it for some time, on a logical level, it would never happen. Now, the brunt of the emotional impact hit her as well, and it was unsettling, to put it mildly. Finally, she wiped her eyes. Look at me, making a fool of myself. She mumbled. I don't think you're a fool. Orium said perkily, handing her a tissue. I think lunch break is almost up, though. Looking at her watch, Chizuru realized she was quite right. She got up to her feet. Feeling she had to give some form of closure to this conversation, anything, she looked at Orium. Thanks. She said lamely. There was any amount of things she could have said instead, or at the least put it a little better, but it was all she could manage without breaking down again. Not waiting for Orium to reply, she turned around and walked off as fast as she could. Later that day, as she walked home from school, she saw her. Just on the road outside the school she stood, Yodomaru Lisa. This strange, really cool girl, whose company she had found herself enjoying more and more. She was a little mysterious, and very fun. And right now, seeming a little cold. Hi. She looked in another direction. It's over. Chizuru said flatly. What? Lisa said sharply, turning her eyes to Chizuru. I'm over Orium. Sort of. Well, I at least know it's not going to happen. I torched all the photos, too. It's over. Suddenly, Lisa's face warmed up. You don't say. Yeah. So how about we? Honestly, right now I don't feel like doing anything even remotely fun. Chizuru said bitterly. I'd cry into my pillow, listen to depressing music and write shitty poetry, except I'm not some dumb emo teen whose life is over just because a crush isn't happening. Well, Lisa said, nodding, and putting an arm around Chizuru, how about we go over to my place, maybe watch a romantic movie, have a bite to eat to it and maybe, hold hands. I'd like that. Chizuru said. Arm in arm, the two walked off. That evening, Tatsuki bolted upright in bed, having been wrestling with her sheets as she awoke in a cold sweat. She had another awful nightmare involving that hideous vampiric Togabito that had promised to come back and kill her. The desecrated bodies of her friends would litter the ground, blood streaming from every corner of her vision. It was like a horror film, only incredibly graphic and very personal. Tatsuki panted as she sat up in bed, eyes wide with terror, sweat dripping down her forehead. She managed to rouse herself enough to get a glass of water and then looked at her bedside clock. It was 1:30 a.m. Unable to fall back asleep, Tatsuki put on a pair of socks and some shoes, grabbed a jacket and went outside. The air was crisp and chilly for a November evening. Tatsuki found the nearest bench and sat down on it before staring up at the moon. She still felt guilty about the fact that she had survived and Rose and Shinji had not. Rose had gotten her to enjoy music as an art form as well as appreciate art in its own right. And never again would she hear one of Shinji's wisecracking jokes that made the air between her and the rest of her friends even more comical than Kigo's spazzing out. She blamed her own lack of strength. She almost felt as if she knew what Ichigo went through when his mother died. True, Tatsuki had nowhere near as close attachment to the Vizards as Ichigo did to his mother, but all of the nightmares and the death promise made her feel very vulnerable once she was all alone, physically at least. As she sat on the bench feeling miserable, a hand suddenly placed itself on her shoulder and Tatsuki nearly jumped out of her skin, only to find that when she looked to the side that Ichigo, clad in his shiakusho, was standing next to her, and she relaxed immediately. "I thought I sensed you out here," he told her. "Shouldn't you be in bed? Shouldn't you?" Tatsuki asked, even though she knew that Ichigo's body didn't carry the sleep deprivation Ichigo should have, with his soul traversing the night sky in the wee hours of the night. From her tone Ichigo could tell something was troubling her, and he felt obligated to dig deeper. Tatsuki was the friend he had known the longest and, save for Orium, the closest one. He sat down on the bench next to her. "What's troubling you?" "Nothing's troubling me. I don't need you to be concerned about me," Tatsuki snapped, turning her head. The last thing she needed was Ichigo prodding into her business, but it was just because he didn't want him to see her being weak. "Is it because you still feel guilty about what happened to Hirako and Odaraibashi-san?" Ichigo asked, surprising Tatsuki. Before she could ask how he knew, he responded with, "Orium told me. She said you've been bothered about the whole thing. I'll tell you again what I told you when we came back from the Soul Society, it's not your fault." "That's pretty hypocritical coming from you." Ichigo knew exactly what she meant. He could see the same kind of pain he felt when he thought he was responsible for his mother's death. He put a comforting arm around his friend's shoulder, but Tatsuki refused to make eye contact and insisted in looking away from him. "Don't try to console me. I don't need you to be worried about me." Tatsuki was starting to become less bitter and more depressed in her tone. "I worry about you just as I worry about my sisters, Orium, and all of our friends. Just stop, okay? I don't need you here." "I'm fine." Tatsuki sounded like she was choking back on tears, and part of her was resenting that fact. Inside her, part of her wanted nothing more than for Ichigo to go away immediately. However, the rest of her just wanted him to sit at her side like he was, because it was happy that he was so concerned about her. Crap. Tatsuki wiped her eyes furiously with her arm. She could feel the tears threatening to fall, and she didn't need Ichigo seeing her being so weak. She was the strong, tough tomboy. She couldn't let her best friend see her acting like a vulnerable girly girl. It was inevitable though, and Tatsuki eventually couldn't hold back her tears anymore. Tatsuki. Ichigo never saw her cry. When they were little, he was the crybaby and mama's boy, while Tatsuki was the one who stood strong and acted like the tough one. If not for the severity of the situation, Ichigo might have thought it was funny how turned the tables were at the moment. "Damn it," his best friend sobbed, "this so unfair. Shit, I hate being a girl sometimes. Stupid emotions. Why couldn't I be like you? You have so many emotional scars, but you don't cry at all unless it really hurts. You don't know what it's like. Almost every little thing provokes an emotional response, and it's so stupid." Ichigo removed his arm from Tatsuki's shoulder and held his hands behind his head and looked up. "Yeah, but when you're a guy you have to fight instinctual impulses not to use violence to solve all your problems and find your lower body tightening up at the most inconvenient of times. At least you don't bleed out of your sex organs once a month, Tatsuki said, starting to feel a little better with how Ichigo had inadvertently turned this into a gender-complaining discussion. You can get away playing the innocent victim even if you have the ability to punch out someone twice your size, which you can do the latter. You don't have to deal with pre-birth child rearing. Ichigo chuckled a little like an idiot as he scratched his head. Okay, you have me there. Tatsuki laughed. You're laughing at least. She immediately stopped and noticed she was now looking in Ichigo's direction as he leaned back looking up at the moon. I'm the one who should be the scowling, angry member of our group. Let me carry the emotional burdens. This isn't your burden to bear. Ichigo sat up and looked at Tatsuki. Then let us help you bear it. Me, Orium, all of us. We're your friends. Tatsuki and Hirako and Odoribashi-san are our friends. This isn't like my mother. You don't need to feel like you need to carry this guilt by yourself. Easy for you to say when neither you nor Chad lost anyone in your group. Tatsuki snapped, quickly shifting back to emotional distraught. Ichigo and Tatsuki then just stared at each other with Ichigo's normal scowl and Tatsuki with an emotionally upset look on her face. Eventually it stopped when Tatsuki shook her head violently and stood up. How is it I screwed up so badly? Now what are you talking about? Ichigo asked, remaining sitting. Tatsuki balled her fists and stared at the floor. You and I were so close and then all of a sudden we just drifted apart and the next thing I know you and Orium are like seaweed and rice wrapped together in a nice sushi roll. Oh, Ichigo knew this might come up again. He knew how Tatsuki felt, but he liked Orium. Or did he really? They were happy, it was true, but what kept them together that Ichigo never looked back at what might have been with his closest friend. It seemed he was about to get his answer. Tears splashed the ground as Tatsuki expounded upon her envy. I always thought you and Orium made a good fit. She brightens you up so you're not scowling all the time. She makes you feel important because she's nowhere near your level and you can always feel important when something too big for her to handle comes along and she freezes up while you play hero. It empowers you and makes you feel important. And if it was you and me I'd always have someone on my six. Tatsuki blinked and turned around towards her friend, sniffing and upset and noticing how Ichigo seemed so nonchalant about the whole thing. What? It's not like I haven't thought about it once or twice. Ichigo then found Tatsuki deep within his personal space as her face smashed into his chest and her fist pounded upon his pectorals. You stupid idiot. Ichigo took a deep breath and rubbed Tatsuki's back soothingly. Where did I miss my chance? Damn it, she sobbed. Ichigo didn't know what to say or what to do. He felt it was best to just let things remain as they are until he had a clearer idea of what to do. Eventually Tatsuki stood up and stood at the edge of the sidewalk, face crazed and hand upon her breast. It's because she's prettier than me, isn't it? Tell me that's why. At least I'll know that despite how you act you're just like every other guy there is. You could be equally happy with me, I know you could. Ichigo promptly walked over to Tatsuki and wrapped his arm around her. Would you stop? He asked. It's got nothing to do with that at all. Tatsuki, you're my best friend and I would never take you for granted. I like Orium for who she is. You did nothing wrong and there's nothing you should beat yourself up over for. I want you to always know that you're the first friend I've ever had and the last friend I'd want to lose, not that I'd want to lose any of you. You and Feng-sensei helped me heal as best you could when I was in a very vulnerable time in my life. You're more important to me than you think. Tatsuki blinked out a tear and put her arms around Ichigo's neck and held onto him, feeling at peace with herself. She had to at least get it out. I love you. I know, and I'm sorry that I can't say it back. I know, Tatsuki blinked. Thank you for guiding me back and being here. It was my turn to help you when you were vulnerable. Tatsuki felt a little drowsy. Thank you. She let go of Ichigo, but he was still holding her. You can let go, you know. Right, sorry. Ichigo saw how half-lidded Tatsuki's eyes were and decided it was best if he helped her inside. She crawled beneath the sheets and Ichigo exited through her window. Tatsuki fell asleep peacefully, content with how things had turned out for her. She drifted off to sleep with her internal conflict resolved. She'd be able to wake up tomorrow with nothing plaguing her mind. Ichigo left her house and headed back on patrol. When it got to be 2 in the morning, he himself headed back to his own body to take a break. It seemed pretty quiet tonight, so the standard representative would most likely be able to handle the scene. He too fell asleep. His talk with Tatsuki had erased his inner doubt about his relationship with Orium. He had wondered from time to time why he hadn't gone after Tatsuki. True, his rescue of Orium multiple times had led to where they were now, but he realized he couldn't choose Tatsuki because her role in his life had never been one of romantic intrigue. She'd been like another sister to him. In fact, she was the reason he ever met Orium in the first place. Satisfied that the lingering love triangle was presumably over, he started to fall asleep, hoping that his dad wouldn't ruin his good night by jumping on his bed. End of chapter 135. Check the description for the links to the author.